The March Transportation Commission meeting. Justin, can you take roll?
Yes, Chair. Commissioner Barnes.
Present.
Commissioner Kerr.
Present.
Vice Chair McCroskey.
Present.
Commissioner Zuba.
Present.
And Chair Hiley.
Present.
Commissioner Ugalde is absent.
All right, start with the land acknowledgement. The City of Albany recognizes that we occupied the land originally protected by the Confederated Villages of Luzon. We acknowledge the genocide that took place on these lands and must make strides to repay the moral debt that is owed to this indigenous people, specifically the Ohlone tribe. We thank them for their contributions, which have transformed our community and will continue to bring forth growth and unity. The City of Albany commits to sustaining ongoing relationships with the tribe and together build a better future for all that now make this their home. All right. We'll start by asking if there's any public comment for any item that is not on the agenda.
Seeing none in the room, if you are attending virtually, use the raise your hand feature, or if you're by phone, press *9 to request to speak. Looks like we have one hand raised.
There's one hand raised. And just a reminder that speakers have 3 minutes.
Go ahead.
Issue with my voice right now. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Very good. I'm losing my voice. This is the proper committee to bring this up in, but I love Albany. I'm actually a citizen of Berkeley. I drive your streets often, and I ride my bike on your streets often. And it seems as though the just of the roadways are getting worse and worse with potholes. And I do see them fill the potholes. It seems as though there's a lack of maintenance on the roads. And I'm sure you're aware of it, but I just wanted to bring it to your attention as someone that uses your roads, both in a car and on a bike. My concern is there's actually areas where it's dangerous to either drive in the vehicle or on a bike on the road. So just bring it forward to the commission. And like I said, I'm sure you're aware of it, but I just thought I would bring it forward. Thank you.
Thank you for your comment. Are there any other hands raised?
No more hands raised.
All right. Now we'll move on to the consent calendar. If anyone would like to pull an item from the consent calendar, please let us know. Otherwise, we'll approve the consent calendar.
Any commissioners pulling an item on from consent? Not seeing any hands raised. There were public comments on
3-3.
consent item. There were. Yeah.
What's,
Oh, somebody was asking.
yeah, that
The
too.
one where somebody was asking about that collision that broke the bus stop.
That was 3-2.
Yeah.
I heard 3-3 from Ken. Commissioner McCroskey. Any public comment request for pulling an item?
Not seeing any hands raised.
All right. Then with that, you please read out the material for 3-2, Justin?
Would you like a presentation on
I think just
3-2,
that
or was there a
one-
question?
Yeah, just that one question that was raised by the public about if there's any additional details or, kind of plans to keep that from happening, something similar happening from the future. What's kind of the assessment?
Sure. I can provide a little more detail on the two collisions that were discussed in the staff memo. The first from the third quarter 2025 was a pedestrian-involved collision at Pierce and Solano. The motorist came to a stop at the all-way stop and then proceeded to make a left turn onto southbound Pierce and struck a pedestrian that was in the crosswalk. It was categorized as visible injuries. The intersection does have daylighting that's been installed, the 20-foot red curb on the approach. And the collision took place at 8:11 p.m. and the lighting was described as dark. And I've relayed the collision information to the staff coordinating the street lighting work, and they noted that the luminaire at that intersection is on the list for this current round of lighting replacement, so it may have already been replaced since the collision, or it would be shortly as part of this current phase of light replacements. Staff hasn't identified any other factors involved in that collision. For the second collision discussed in the report, this was on San Pablo Avenue. The details I've been provided are that a motorist was making a right turn off of Dartmouth and struck the backside of a northbound car traveling northbound on San Pablo, lost control of the vehicle, crossed the southbound lanes, and then traveled onto the sidewalk and struck the AC Transit bus shelter. That's the additional description I have.
Do you know if the police has any sort of plans to do like I don't know what they call it, but like a postmortem where they kind of assess that intersection and space, or does the city have a plan to better protect that bus stop in the future, or what?
Based on the description that the police department has provided, I haven't identified any intersection design features that contributed to the collision. An errant vehicle mounting the sidewalk, I can't predict where that would happen on city streets to say like a particular location is in need of any different protective measure from something like that. But if there are questions that the commission would like me to look into with the information we have, I'm happy to look further. But I haven't identified any design feature of the intersection based on this description.
Are there any other questions? Otherwise, I think we would go treat this like a agenda topic. You have a question?
Yeah. Are we assuming that there were no injuries because there weren't any mentioned in the report, or the written report? You have more information.
Yeah, my understanding is there were no injuries. Well, let me backtrack. I do not believe there were any injuries of anyone outside the vehicle. I don't know if it was an injury because we haven't yet seen the usual data we see once it gets entered. I did not ask particularly if the anyone inside the vehicle reported injury. My understanding is there was a pedestrian nearby, but they were not struck by the vehicle.
Was this one of the legacy bus shelters that is unlikely to be replaced?
I don't know the answer. My understanding is we have a new, AC Transit has a new shelter contract, so I would expect it to be replaced, but I would have to follow up with AC Transit about that.
That's all I need to know. Thank you.
That was my question.
Great. Are there any public comments on this item? All right, then I'll bring it back. Oh,
Sorry, no public comments on that.
I'll bring it back to the commission for any comments. All right. Thank you. Then with that, we'll move on to 3.3. Ken, is there anything particular that you would like to have presented or discussed?
I didn't, maybe I was looking at the wrong time, but I didn't see any data or item attached to this, but now I see it's in there. And I remember getting the public correspondence.
Yeah, they were asking about, the connectivity of different, whatever, the bike shares, scooter shares. Didn't we also get a public comment, or not a public comment, but somebody had emailed us, just CC'd us on an email about the scooter being left in the middle of the path also. So I guess, can you address the question that was posed by this person? Do we have any information about regional, like, connectivity of these different, of VO or any of the others?
VO is the only one we're reporting on that's operating in the city currently. They have not communicated, and I have not heard from city staff in El Cerrito of expansion plans. The numbers have increased over this reporting period over the second half of this last year. I would expect part of that is additional ridership with more graduate students at UC Village is contributing to that to some extent. But the last permit application we have from them reflects the same number of scooters anticipated in the range of 25 to 100 seated and 25 to 100 standing scooters in Albany.
I think initially VO scooters weren't allowed on UC Berkeley property. Do you know if that's still true?
That is still the case.
Are there any other questions from the commission?
Just a comment that I find it encouraging that there's an increase in use. I would like there to be more information available about what to do about that errant scooter that's in the middle of the sidewalk. For how do you get rid of that thing? So I don't know what the city has available for that, but if there were a way to report directly to VO or city, I'm not sure where the responsibility would lie. I would assume with the contracted agency. But it would be good if we put some public information out and education out.
On that same point, within their permit, do they have language about like maintenance and how frequently they're kind of scanning and, correcting parking and things? Is that part of their permit process?
We're getting a little beyond presentation of the data, but the permit does include requirements for how quickly they move when there are reports of blocking sidewalks. There should be information on the vehicle itself on what number to call or who to email, and we make that available as well. But we can bring back information on an update on the program at a future commission meeting.
I think that'd be helpful. Are there any public comments for this item?
Not seeing any hands raised.
Right. Then just last, bring it back to the commission for any additional comments. Yeah, I'll just echo Commissioner Kerr that it is encouraging that the use is increased, and I think it shows that there is an obvious need and desire for micromobility options in Albany, especially since we don't have a BART station. And for it to be super effective, it'd be great for it to match what our neighboring cities use. So I would encourage the city to engage and coordinate with the other cities and programs. Right, anything else?
I'd like to move approval of the entirety of item 3.
I second that.
Ready for roll call?
Ready for roll?
Commissioner Barnes?
Yes.
Commissioner Kerr?
Yes.
Vice Chair McCroskey?
Yes.
Commissioner Zuba?
Yes.
And Chair Hiley?
Yes.
Motion carries.
Right. Thank you. Now, moving on to the agenda items. For one is San Pablo Avenue corridor projects.
I'm inviting up Matt Bomberg to present this item from Alameda CDC, since your designee on the discussion following up your December meeting has had to step down from the commission and can't present this to you. Give me 1 second to bring up the presentation. Oops, wrong.
Okay, thanks, commissioners. Good to be back presenting. So this is a follow-up presentation to the December 2025 presentation on San Pablo projects, focused on 2 projects within City of Albany that Alameda CTC is close to completing the design and starting the construction phase of. We're seeking an action on one of the projects tonight, and then the other one is being presented for informational purposes. Next slide, please. So just a kind of broader corridor overview, and I know there's a new commissioner since December, so Alameda CTC is advancing 3 different projects within the broader San Pablo corridor. 2 of them are within Albany. The Safety Enhancements Project, which is shown in green here, which is focused on kind of crossing and transit stop improvements along San Pablo Avenue. And then the Parallel Bike Improvements Project, which is on streets parallel and connecting to San Pablo Avenue and is focused on crossing improvements at major streets and completing kind of gaps within the local bike boulevard networks as an alternative to bike facilities on San Pablo Avenue in the northern part of the San Pablo corridor. There's a third project that's a longer-term project in the southern tip of Berkeley, Oakland, and Emeryville, which is bus lanes and bike lanes, which won't be a focus for tonight. Next slide, please. And so this is just a zoom in on the northern part of the San Pablo corridor, in Berkeley and Albany, showing those northern 2 projects. So again, the yellow bar is the Safety Enhancements Project. In addition to passing through the 2 different cities of Berkeley and Albany, it's also on State Route 123, Caltrans facility, and then San Pablo Avenue is, of course, a very busy AC transit corridor, the second busiest in their entire system. So a lot of different stakeholders involved in that project. And then the bold green lines on this map depict the Parallel Bike Project. It's kind of discontinuous. It's a series of different segments and spot improvements because it works in concert with existing bike boulevard networks and some projects that the cities have taken the lead on, such as City of Albany's work on Keynes and Adams. Within Albany, there's just 2 intersections as part of the Parallel Bike Project, which are the crossings of Keynes Solano and Keynes Marin. Next slide, please. So just a little more kind of high-level detail on the status and scope of these 2 projects. So the Parallel Bike Project includes elements such as traffic calming features, diverters, and traffic circles. These are within the Berkeley and Oakland sections of this project. Wayfinding, and then major street crossing treatments focused on safe and comfortable ways for cyclists and other wheeled-use devices to get across busier streets. This project's fully funded. We've essentially completed the design of the project, and it's environmentally cleared. We're wrapping up a few kind of final utility coordination items, and then planning to be advertising the project for construction this summer. And then once a construction contractor is on board, would actually start construction towards the end of 2026, beginning of 2027. Next slide, please. And then the Safety Enhancements Project, which is, again, the one on Caltrans facility, and this one's just for information tonight, includes elements such as bus bulbs, which are kind of essentially large bulb outs at the AC Transit limited stops that let the bus stop in lane and provide more space for passengers waiting. Crossing treatments such as pedestrian hybrid beacons and flashing beacons and median refuge treatments, curb ramp upgrades, and then a couple of locations where there's kind of offset side streets short sections of protected bikeways or cycle tracks to help users get across the offset intersection within that single block. This project's also fully funded. We are currently reviewing 100% design plans with the different project stakeholders, environmentally cleared, and we're seeking to conclude the design by June of this year to meet some funding deadlines to request construction funding allocations. Next slide, please. So we did present on these two projects in December 2025. Got some kind of general feedback on the projects, as well as a lot of discussion on a few specific intersections shown here. I won't read every bullet on these slides, because in terms of the location-specific feedback, I'm going to try and actually show how the updated designs have incorporated that feedback. Just there was some general feedback to use inclusive terminology when talking about users of bike and other wheeled device facilities, which I'm going to attempt to do through my language. I have used the word bike on the slides for brevity, not cluttering it up with too many words, but it was a good suggestion and appreciative of it. And then just some general suggestions about importance of wayfinding signage and discouraging mixing of wheeled use devices and need for them to dismount at crossings. At the intersections of Keynes, Solano, a lot of discussion about exactly where cyclists or other wheeled use devices should wait and be positioned, and how they would be detected at that crossing to trigger the flashing beacon. At Keynes Marin, similar, some discussion about how facilities along Keynes would work with intersecting facilities along Marin, as well as just the significant vehicular queuing that occurs along Marin Avenue during the AM peak in particular. And then at San Pablo Dartmouth, just again, discussion about where cyclists wait, how they actuate the ped hybrid beacon there, and not kind of cluttering up tight space on the west side in front of Sprouts. And then on the east side, the suggestion to look to the Berkeley crossing at MLK and Channing and the sort of slot design that's there. And then the crossings of San Pablo, Washington, and San Pablo Clay, Brighton, which are kind of two offset local bike boulevards that cross San Pablo, the importance of wayfinding and communicating how people get through the intersection. Next slide, please. Since the last Transportation Commission, we also held a kind of multi-city combined staff and local advisory commission representative workshop meeting to talk about some design issues that cross different cities, or where there's some kind of peer knowledge sharing to be gained through this project on those issues. It was a highly technical meeting, workshopping a few of the locations in the plans. The representatives were Fareed Javandel from, at the time, the Albany Transportation Commission, Naveen Gatu from the Berkeley Transportation and Infrastructure Commission, and then Robert Prince, who's on the Oakland BPAC Infrastructure Commission, and also with Bike East Bay, and has a lot of countywide knowledge of different facilities. There were three kind of main topics that we had queued up, that Alameda CTC staff had queued up for the group. I would say two of them either don't really pertain to Albany as part of this project, or Albany, I think, kind of had lessons for the other jurisdictions to learn from. And then the last one listed here, I think there was some kind of direct feedback into this project from the discussion. So in the project, there are some traffic circles proposed in Berkeley and Oakland, some of which are landscaped, and then some of which have fully mountable centers. And there had been some interest in Transportation Commission presentations in the other jurisdictions about why the fully mountable design, and just making sure that it's visible. This was really a matter of kind of informing the group that at those locations, some of them are in kind of commercial or light industrial areas. Like one of them is actually at 8th and Harrison, kind of right across the border in Berkeley, where there's significant truck activity, and so just
Motorhomes.
Yeah, as well as post office facility, tile shops, Whole Foods. There's a lot of semi-trailers traveling through there as well that just physically would not be able to negotiate an intersection with a standard landscape center traffic circle. So in this project will be implementing a sort of gently sloping stamped concrete center design that a truck could just track over the middle of if needed. Berkeley has started implementing these at some other locations as well, and there's some fine tuning of just pavement markings and curb painting and other kind of striping details to make sure that the lower profile design is visible, especially at night. So that was kind of the discussion there. The ramp design, I think this is something that really comes out of a lot of Albany's detailed attention to curb ramp design and attempts to meet PROAG, the public right-of-way access guidelines, which sort of prioritize directional or blended transition ramps, but directional ramps don't often fit in constrained spaces. Blended transition ramps are essentially when the whole corner comes down to street level, which means pedestrians aren't directed out into the intersection at a 45-degree angle like they would be with a non-directional ramp, but since they are at street level, if there's not drainage infrastructure already in place, they're subject to flooding and debris congregating in them. And so on this project, we took an approach of, at some of the residential street corners, going with non-directional ramps because there wasn't drainage infrastructure in place and because at a residential intersection, it's different safety considerations in terms of pedestrian not being able to follow a direct path of travel from the sidewalk into the crosswalk, as opposed to, say, like an intersection of San Pablo and Marin, where they're closer to higher speed traffic. I think there's interest in, I don't think there's necessarily a right answer here. I think this is something that merits further discussion, and I think maybe the main suggestion coming out of this workshop meeting was continued discussion on the issue and bringing in the accessibility community on kind of this trade-off because rain doesn't happen 300 days out of the year in the Bay Area, but on the other hand, when ramps flood, then debris gathers in there that can stay for a long time. So I think there's sort of valid arguments on both sides, and it merits further discussion was sort of the takeaway. And then the last topic was really about the bike crossings of major streets, and I think in the interest of time, I'm actually going to weave in some of the outcomes from the group discussion on some specific locations on this project. So we can move on to the next slide here. So I'm going to cover 4 specific locations, 2 of them on the parallel bike project, and then 2 of them on the safety enhancements project. And as a reminder, the parallel bike project is the one where we're seeking the action tonight. So these are also locations that received a lot of discussion from this group back in December. So this is the crossing improvements that the project would be constructing at the Canes is shown from north to south here, top to bottom across the page, and then Solano Avenue is side to side. So there's the existing predominantly one-way southbound circulation along Canes and existing bulb outs. The project would be installing flashing beacons, and these are designed to assist both pedestrians and cyclists in crossing or other wheeled user devices in crossing Solano Avenue. I think a couple of things to highlight in terms of sort of new features or changes. One is that the flashing beacon would be able to be triggered either by video detection or by a cyclist or wheeled device user hitting a push button. The idea is the push button is there kind of as a backup, just in case there are any technology issues with the video. The video detection zones were sort of enlarged and shifted to be kind of out of more of the parking lane so that a cyclist is waiting out of the path of a right-turning vehicle and can sort of maintain their lane positioning more. There was also a suggestion to look at replacing the existing flexible bollards that are on the northern leg of the intersection with concrete islands, and actually using one of those concrete islands as a place to put one of the bike push buttons. So that was something we took a look at and thought had a lot of merit. So you can see that reflected with the little concrete islands on either side of the crosswalk at the top of the page. I think other than that, this one is more or less as was presented in December. Next slide, please.
Can I ask a question?
Yeah, you can.
In the north area of the intersection, there are two protective islands. The northernmost one is adjacent to the red zone, otherwise known as the delivery driver parking space. And I'm wondering about the angle if I'm going northbound on a wheeled vehicle under my own power, will I have enough space to turn between the bollards if I have to, because somebody is parked in the red zone?
That is, I think we just assumed the red curb was functioning as red curb, so it's good to know that.
Sorry.
Yeah, I would hope that people would not pull right up against the island, that they would feel kind of somewhat uncomfortable doing so, but maybe we could.
Why do you assume that? It's generous of you, but experience has shown, unfortunately.
Okay. We'll take a look into.
Does that northernmost bollard protect the pedestrians primarily?
To be honest, I don't know that it serves much purpose because the street is, it's not intended as an actual pedestrian refuge where pedestrians wait.
Right, because presumably you got the wheeled vehicles going through there.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. We can come back to that later.
Okay.
Just to be clear, when you're talking about those bollards, those are the green ones that kind of look like pawn pieces in a
Exactly.
chess game?
Yeah.
Well, but they're replacing those with concrete.
Right.
And what are these, their islands, how tall are they?
It would be
Round terms?
typical 6-inch high curb.
Curb.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. Okay.
I'm sorry if I interrupted your rhythm there.
No, you caught me off guard with a good tidbit of local knowledge that we need to look into. Next slide. So this is the crossing of Canes at Marin Avenue. At this crossing, the existing median would get extended to the east, which is the right of the page, that would create places for pedestrian refuges and wheeled device waiting areas so that they could cross the intersection in 2 stages. It would also just remove some of the left turns across Marin Avenue, just creating fewer conflicts between turning vehicles and active users crossing at the intersection. Some of those turns already not possible due to the circulation here. And then there would be a pedestrian hybrid beacon, which is essentially like a half traffic signal constructed at the intersection, which would be interconnected to the signal at San Pablo Marin. So that would provide the ability to kind of hold people waiting to cross until it's a ideal time for them to cross and not hold up traffic along Marin Avenue that backs up from San Pablo Avenue. Whereas today they could essentially cross at any point and there's no sort of control of the interconnection between the 2 intersections. On both the north and south legs, there would be waiting areas for cyclists or other wheeled user devices. They're behind the crosswalk, and they would have video detection as well as push buttons that are shown kind of off to the right in the little bulb outs. And the push buttons would also have an indicator light that would come on so somebody knows that they've been detected by the video detection. And then one of the things we added based on feedback last time we presented to this group was the two-stage turn boxes. So these are positioned between the crosswalk and Marin Avenue, kind of on the intersection side of the crosswalk. And they would also have video detection zones drawn in them. We did take a look at trying to consolidate the bike boxes and the two-stage turn boxes, and essentially there's not enough space between the crosswalk and Marin Avenue for a standard depth bike box, so you would be either realigning the crosswalk in a way that would not line up with the pedestrian ramps, or expecting a cyclist or wheeled user device to stop in an exactly 6-foot deep box, otherwise their front wheel would be hanging out into conflicting traffic. So even though it's a lot of kind of striping, we felt it was better to just treat the turning movement and the through movement separately in terms of where they stop and wait. I guess I can pause for any questions or comments on this one.
I'm a little confused about two-stage turn box because I have seen something like that in Taipei and Taiwan. Does this mean if you want to go north on Keynes there, right? I'm assuming north is up, correct?
Yes, north is up in this.
So if you were coming along Marin and you want to make that turn, which can be dangerous, you instead go into that turn box and wait for the light to change and then go northbound?
Exactly.
I've never seen this in the US before. I mean, it works great in Taipei, although it's mostly motor scooters. Is this common in the United States?
I would say it's been a treatment within the California Manual on Uniform, METCD, Manual on Uniform Traffic Control Devices, which is sort of permissible striping treatments within California for about 10 years now, and I have seen them implemented in Oakland, Berkeley, other cities in the Inner East Bay.
Okay, thanks. My concern was that people wouldn't know what to do because they are unfamiliar with them, but maybe they're just more familiar with them than I am.
Yeah.
You mentioned that a cyclist would know that there was a video detection of them through some kind of indicator light?
Yeah, so on the push button poles, which are kind of in the top left and the bottom right corners, there would also be a little, it's like a 6-inch circular light with a bike, and it turns on in a blue color when a cyclist has, or wheeled device has been detected by the video detection. So
Okay.
some feedback that they've been detected so that they don't think they're not getting detected and just cross when they're not.
Right. And is that also at Keynes and Solano?
No, and this is actually something I failed to mention that was discussed at the workshop meeting. The feedback at the workshop meeting was that at flashing beacons, because the beacon essentially is triggered instantaneously once somebody has hit the button.
Detected, yeah.
And there's often audible feedback as well, that there's not the same issue of people waiting and not knowing whether they've been detected or not. So rather
And
something else that needed to be maintained when the need was questionable, we didn't include it.
Sure. So the flashing beacons are facing the traffic on Solano, and how do you know that they're flashing in the daytime if you're coming on Keynes?
They will be angled slightly, and you can see there's actually one on the near and the far corners, and they're pretty bright.
I see. So if you're coming south,
motorists from 1,000 or more feet away. So.
right, so you're seeing it over your shoulder. Great. And then looking back to Marin, same question. You described how somebody would know that the button had been pushed, and then I don't see the same sort of directional indicators. Could you describe what I would see if I came up and activated it? How would I know when I was safest to go across?
So, I guess, sorry, this is on this corner and then the top left one. Together with the push button would be the indicator light I was describing. I apologize, I should have brought an image of that as part of the presentation. But yeah.
So the beacon would be at the top of that pole, you're saying? Or that's just the indicator that it was pushed?
That's just the indicator that that a detection has happened.
And where are the lights that get activated?
They would be mounted overhead, more like.
So they're arched over?
Signal.
Yeah, okay. And so I've experienced some discomfort at the hawk signal because it's hard to tell when the traffic has the full red light. How would I know that the signal has been fully activated and it's a good time for me to cross?
So there are also standard pedestrian signal heads for pedestrians or cyclists crossing Marin Avenue. So a bike or a pedestrian would see just a standard walk symbol.
Okay. Great.
I just have a quick question about, is this study or the work that's been done anticipate any particular volume of e-bike and bike and two-wheel transit along Canes? I mean, how much traffic increase is expected? How much is current and how much might we anticipate in the future?
Yeah, can't say we've done specific forecasting of expected volumes. I think it's motivations of the project are partly just around safety and issues of safety getting across the existing.
Okay.
condition.
But unknown quantities?
Yeah.
Okay.
I have one more question about on this slide. Sorry if you already mentioned this, but is in the two-stage turn box, are devices detected in that box?
Yeah, the diagonal hatching is both the video detection zone, so
Okay,
as well as where green pavement markings would be. So,
thank you.
yeah.
I got one more. Will the video detection differentiate between larger and smaller vehicles, like a car versus a scooter? Or is it just any vehicle that comes?
Aren't you talking about this one? Cars can't turn left there.
I'm saying what activates the lights through the video?
Yeah, I am not totally knowledgeable about that, so I don't want to provide a false or a wrong answer here. You look like you want to jump in, Dustin.
Yeah, I can jump in here. So it is supposed to distinguish between cyclists or smaller vehicles and motor cars, larger motor vehicles. It is one of the reasons we have had extensive discussions with our peer cities is some experience in Berkeley with installations where cars have triggered and the technology has not done a good job of distinguishing. And so that's partly why we want both video detection and the push button detection. If we're causing issues and we're not able to get it with the current technology, we might scale back to the push button if it's not operationally working. So that's why we have the redundancy here. It's based on feedback of peer city experience with this. But we want to try the video detection. We want we've tried to, as we showed on the Solana one in particular, tried to distinguish the spaces to try to avoid some of the overlap between the two types of vehicles.
And I think to the extent there's shortcomings with the video technology, I would surmise it's probably more of a software issue than a hardware issue. So, installing the cameras as the software to distinguish gets better. You can update the software. You already have the hardware there. So.
Yeah.
just for the clarification, so the blinking lights that are signaling to cars that a pedestrian or somebody is trying to cross, those are just yellow blinking lights, right? It's not like a hawk where it's a red stop sign, correct?
Yeah, that's correct. Yeah, so the one at Kane Solano on the previous slide is the flashing beacon. It's still a yield condition, and it's.
And then at Canes and Marin?
At Canes Marin, it's a full stop
The
condition.
full
Yeah.
clock. Okay, so then is the timing going to be different, whether it's a pedestrian who's pushing the button, like the amount of time that the red light is on? Is that for cars? Is that going to be different whether a pedestrian is pushing the button versus if a cyclist is coming up to trigger it? Or is it going to be the same length?
Yeah, I think it would be the same
Okay.
because even if it gets actuated by a cyclist, a pedestrian could then come along and try and
Right, right.
cross, and
Yeah.
you wouldn't want to give them not enough time, and then they're stuck in the intersection. So, yeah. Can move on to the next one. So there's two other locations I was going to cover. One of them is at San Pablo Dartmouth. So this is part of the safety enhancements project on San Pablo itself. So at this location, there's the existing pedestrian hybrid beacon that was constructed along with the Sprouts development. And the project work here is really focused on providing better ways for people on wheeled devices to trigger the ped hybrid beacon and get through the intersection. So previously, we were proposing push buttons, additional push buttons for cyclists to supplement the ones that are there for pedestrians but are kind of hard to reach in the typical locations where a bike would want to wait. We have changed the design to move away from the push buttons to loop detection. So that's like passive detection rather than having to push a button. On the west side, I think we took to heart the feedback that it's just a really tight space, and adding additional push buttons is just going to clutter up the space more and make it hard to make turns in a constrained space. It's also, just because it's kind of in the sidewalk area or shared sidewalk cycle track area, there's really no concerns about false actuation of the loop detection, and video is not possible here because of the fact that it's a Caltrans facility and just some of the existing signal maintenance arrangements between the city and Caltrans. So, on the east leg, there was the suggestion to look into the slot design from MLK Channing, where at that location in Berkeley, there's essentially a cyclist waiting area with a little curb separation on either side that's between a right turn pocket on one side and opposing direction on the other. We did look into it, and Dartmouth is a much narrower street than Channing, and we just weren't able to provide enough receiving lane width for vehicles making a right turn from northbound San Pablo onto Dartmouth with concrete separation islands. But we did modify the striping to essentially reflect that design with this little stub of a bike lane to the left of the right turn pocket, which kind of lines it up better with the bike passageway and gets them out of the right hook. And this would also have a loop detector, but it's in the bike lane and not in the right turn pocket, so it shouldn't be the issues. So yeah, that's essentially a summary of the changes at this location. Want to discuss this one?
We can't discuss it,
Or
right? But I guess clarifying questions.
okay, well, move on to the other. So the last sort of topic or set of locations was there was some discussion about wayfinding for the offset bike boulevards. So there's two of these, the Washington crossing and then the Clay and Brighton crossing. So Washington has existing bike boulevard signage, kind of with directing people to different destinations, approaching San Pablo on either side. And what we're looking to add through this project would be a sign modeled on a Berkeley Bike Boulevard sign that sort of conveys to people approaching the intersection that they're going to make this dogleg maneuver through the intersection. Clay and Brighton, there's not currently any Bike Boulevard wayfinding or destination signage along either Clay or Brighton, so just given the limited scope of our project, which is focused on just the intersection of San Pablo, Clay, and Brighton, what we're looking to do is just install the sign or something similar to the sign shown on the right, but leave it to the city to do future Bike Boulevard signage as part of a larger Clay or Brighton-focused project that could come along at some point. And then at both intersections, there would be pavement markings through the intersection to convey the expected path of travel for a cyclist. Next slide. So I'll conclude by just summarizing the action here, which is we are requesting that the Transportation Commission recommend that City Council authorize staff to issue an encroachment permit for the construction of the San Pablo Avenue Parallel Bike Project within Albany to the Transportation Commission and to Alameda County Transportation Commission and our designated contractor. So after we complete the design and award a construction contract, our contractor will need to pull a permit from the city, but we would like to have just a commitment from the city that essentially this city approves the design and there will be no issues issuing that contract. So hence the request for this action to memorialize that tonight. Justin, I don't know if there's anything you wanted to add about just the city process or the action.
I think that summarizes it well. It is a project that's not being installed by the city, but the city would be accepting the improvements at the conclusion of it. So the council action would, give staff the authorization with the encroachment permit process to accept that once the construction is complete.
All right, thank you. Thank you so much. Are there any questions from the commission?
Yeah.
What's the timeline? I mean, assuming that it's already funded, we're at this stage of the development of the plans, when would it be done and we cut the ribbon?
Yeah, so for the parallel bike project, we're planning to be advertising for construction contract in July, and then typically bidding and awarding a construction contract is a 4 to 6 month process, and then the construction actually start end of this year or beginning of 2027. The total construction period is about 1.5 years, but this is a project that includes more than just City of Albany. So we've been discussing with City of Albany staff kind of how this project will align with some other city projects happening along Marin Avenue, not wanting to have two contractors out there working at the same time. The city actually has a sewer line replacement project along Marin Avenue, I believe. So some of the Albany locations may be sequenced later within the construction period so as to not overlap with that project.
Yeah, I've noticed I'm assuming that's the sewer project going on right now on Marin. Is that the EPA consent project?
The sewer project that's referencing is the one that's going to be occurring between Marin and Cornell. That's still in design, but it's slated for construction completion by June of next year.
Okay. And what about effects on pedestrians and traffic while this is being built?
So for the parallel bike project, the contractor will be required to develop traffic control plans that get reviewed by the city, as well as Alameda CTC will review them. Any city requirements in terms of maintaining pedestrian access during construction would get incorporated into those traffic control plans. Typically, there's a requirement that they can't do construction on multiple corners at the same time so that pedestrian diversions are not too onerous, particularly within a major commercial district like Solano Avenue. I don't anticipate there would be a need for like any kind of full lane closures or diversion off of Solano or Marin as part of the project from a vehicular perspective.
Okay, thank you.
And just to clarify, since there are two projects, Matt was answering on the one that we're seeking action tonight. The San Pablo project has much more extensive traffic control plans that are going through cities as well as Caltrans review. That one is more involved.
This is a great presentation. I want to thank you. And I just basically support the whole concept of a parallel bike improvement project. What I would like to feel reassured about is that we know how many people are going to be impacted by this. What is the volume of bike traffic along that corridor currently? And what could we anticipate as increased parallel traffic because we've improved the project? So I don't know if that's something that could be quickly assessed and added to your notes, or if it is a whole other element, but it is something that I would find very useful and interesting and important as we fund something like this.
I can say Alameda CTC does bicycle and pedestrian counts at regular intervals throughout the county. County is large, so I think we count 150 locations every other year, I believe. So there's potentially some baseline data out there and would be some after data. I think it's really difficult to attribute changes to any particular project just because a project could happen, but then there's also economic changes that change travel patterns. So causal relationships are difficult to establish, but we do collect data on kind of what the trends are, and there's some inferences that could be made. Yeah.
I don't have the numbers off the top of my head. From the Keynes and Adams pilot evaluation, we do have numbers of existing cyclists that have been using Keynes and Adams and San Pablo. We didn't go into it tonight, but Matt did mention there is an interconnection between the Marin San Pablo and the Marin Keynes Hawk, and so the activation of the Hawk when that would be a red light is going to be coordinated to minimize impact on Marin traffic.
So any volume information that you can add, I think, would enhance the project and enhance the presentation. You got it, put it up there.
Any other questions?
No, it's okay. This is more, it'll turn into a comment, so I'll just wait.
Just a clarifying question about how we can have good discussion tonight. Are you asking for comments on any items specifically at this point, or any type of comments?
We are seeking approval of the parallel bike project at this point, so I think comments that are sort of extremely minor, such as looking into the delivery parking and red zone issue, but don't sort of alter the substance of the project, I think could be maybe a friendly amendment to an action, but we're looking for an action to approve the project tonight. Yeah.
Thank you. All right, with that, we'll turn over to public comment. Is there anyone in person that would like to comment on this item? All right, do we have anyone online?
One hand raised online. Hold on. Go ahead.
Hi, my name's Carrie Schulman. I live near the middle school, and my kids attend Ocean View Elementary School and the middle school. Biking is my primary form of transportation, and I'm super excited about these improvements. It's so cool that you found a way to let cyclists know that they've been detected. Not getting detected is really frustrating and can tempt cyclists to run red lights, so I really think this is a great change. I just have a couple suggestions. That are hopefully minor. I'm wondering, well, this one's bigger, but maybe for the longer term, an add-on after this, I'm wondering if there's anything being done to decrease car traffic on canes. I'm concerned that these improvements will also make it more convenient for cars to use canes in addition to the bikes, and bicycle boulevards only work with low car volume. I'm also wondering for the video detection zones, if it's possible to set the detection back a ways, so it might be able for the light to change green without the cyclist having to stop some of the time. They've managed to do something like this at the intersection of Powell and Doyle Street in Emeryville, and it's just really delightful to, as a cyclist, to sometimes get the green light, which is pretty special because bicyclists have to stop all the time. And lastly, at the San Pablo crossing at Washington, I'm not sure if the ship's already sailed on this one, but I really think the bicycle crossing phase should only be for bikes and not have bikes mixed with cars. Only really experienced cyclists would feel comfortable biking in a lane that's mixed with cars. And I definitely would not let my younger kid bike on her own through this intersection the way it's currently designed. So those are my comments, but most of all, these changes are really great, and I want to thank you for all the work that you've put into this. The end.
No more public comment.
All right, thank you. Back to the commission for any additional comments.
I have one comment that relates to Dartmouth, and I guess also the Marin and Keynes crossing where we have a hawk-like sign. So first, the existing, wait, I'm in the wrong slide. The existing push button on Dartmouth, it's not on that corner. It's on the, like where, it's kind of where that, if you go to the slide, what is it, slide 10? The existing push button is back where you have a little sign that says APS and then like 0/through BP. That's where the existing push button is. Is there another one? Is there a second one? I don't think so.
No, I think the little label is just not pointed to the right place, but
Okay.
the existing one would not change in its location.
Okay, so that one would still be where it is. Okay. The other thing that I wanted to comment on is to correct something that I said last time when you presented on this, and I said that the light changes to a flashing for the cars before the cycling or like the pedestrian indicator changes. And I've looked back at it and I'm wrong. The light, it changes from a green walk sign to like the red flashing sign before the actual car signal changes from a solid red to a flashing red. But the issue still exists, which is the countdown starts really high. I don't know, it's like at 20 seconds or something. And so what happens a lot, it still results in the same functionality, which is as soon as it turns to red flashing light, if for the cars, if the initial person who triggered the initial pedestrian or cyclist who triggered the light has crossed, the cars start going. And so when somebody else comes up, particularly bicyclists, they'll see that it's like a red flashing, but it'll be like 19 or 18, seconds. So they'll enter and try and cross it. And I've crossed there several times where a car doesn't see the bicyclist coming, and so then it like creates conflict. And so I'm concerned that when a cyclist or a pedestrian sees a green hand or even like a high numbered flashing red, they are presuming that all the other traffic is stopped. But that's not necessarily the case because the cars get impatient or they're not really like looking, and as soon as the red, it turns from a solid red to a flashing red, they start going. So I don't know what the solution is. I don't know if you could hold the solid red for longer until it gets down to like 5 seconds on the the pedestrian crossing sign, or if there's some other solution. But I've had this personally happen to me several times, and I have witnessed it near misses several times. And I really, especially on at Dartmouth and San Pablo, because the bikes that are coming, they're not that visible. It's not a straight cross. So in both the Dartmouth and San Pablo intersection, and then also if we're going to put the same kind of structure in at Marin and Keynes, it's just something to think about. And that's why I was asking you about that question of like, is the signal going to be the same for a cyclist versus a pedestrian? So that's my comment. It feels risky. Like the way that it's currently set up is not ideal.
Okay. Yeah, I can communicate that to, I think, the county. Well, the signal timing is approved by Caltrans, but the signal is maintained by Alameda County, I believe. Albany contracts electrical maintenance.
This is Caltrans maintained, but it's something we can look at what the programming is for the new one and for the current one. The reason it's a short solid red and a long flashing red is partly to improve compliance with people stopping, and so there is a balance between when there's only one person crossing and they've crossed, especially if it's a cyclist and they've crossed relatively quickly compared to how long a pedestrian would take. You have a long period where you're telling folks to stop and there's no one around.
Yeah.
And so it is a balance between making sure we get good vehicle compliance with the indications and someone arriving later and still wanting to make it through the intersection.
Yeah.
So we can look at the signal timing, I think, and make sure that we're being consistent and up to the latest guidance on those with these projects.
Or separate out the bicycle crossing from a pedestrian crossing, so that, I mean, I know your point is that somebody might approach, but if I'm a cyclist and there's, I can push the cycle button or trigger the light, and it could be a much shorter countdown, because what practically has happened is people who drive San Pablo frequently, they're used to, they get tired of waiting, exactly what you said, and so they treat it as like, they don't stop. They stop, but they don't wait until the light switches. So that would be my suggestion. It is like, if it's a cyclist who can trigger it and it's just a short stop for the cars, then that might improve compliance of them just waiting until the light turns back off or flashes. But yeah, I don't know. If you just go and hang out there, a couple like high traffic times, you'll see that this happens quite a bit. I ride it every day because it's where I have a kid to drop off on that side.
Any other comments?
Yeah. Thank you, by the way. I haven't said it, others have. Their presentation, a lot of work that went into this, obviously. So I've been thinking about that northernmost island at Keynes and Solano. And I actually like physical blocks in red zones. Perhaps you could consider moving it like a tectonic plate northeast into the red zone, where it would become more of a protection of the red zone than whatever it was implied for before, and allow the cyclists or other rolling vehicles to use that space to get into the main travel area. If you remove it entirely, the situation with the use of red zones as we see it doesn't disappear.
Okay.
That's my
I would-
feedback.
I think goals are deter parking in the red zone, but not create an opening too narrow between the parked vehicle and the end of an island. Yeah.
These are suggestions you're going to take and do with what you will. Thanks for listening. For Keynes and Marin, this was a location of a pedestrian death. This infrastructure is really serving to support all active users at this intersection. And even if it doesn't increase cyclist throughput, it's making this intersection safer for all modes. So I really support it. We talked a lot about the different feedback, and I forgot what you said, or if you said about Dartmouth. How do we know if we're a cyclist and we're on the loop that we've been detected?
So Dartmouth would, I believe Dartmouth would not have the bike detection indicator light, and it just relates to the fact that it's Caltrans maintained. Caltrans' position has been that any signal equipment that's not part of their sort of standard suite of signal equipment that they maintain, that they would force the city to take on the maintenance of. So that was also the reason for doing loop detection and not video detection, is trying to stay within the family of things that Caltrans maintains and not fundamentally alter the city's current arrangement in terms of signal maintenance. So.
Do they, is there a tone indicator at the push buttons at this intersection that changes when you push the button?
That's standard for pedestrian detection.
Right,
Buttons, so,
but it's all the same timing, so couldn't that signal go off and change when a cyclist is detected?
yeah, I don't know the answer to that, and whether it would be audible to somebody who's not necessarily right next to where the APS is, but I'm curious.
Great, I'm glad I've piqued your curiosity. So from what you're saying, I'm guessing that the walk signal boxes that have a conformational surrounding light that lights when you press the button, that's also probably not part of Caltrans standard.
Sorry, could you repeat that?
Right. So I've seen boxes in Portland, boxes that have the walk signals in them, and when you press the button on the opposite side or on either side, there's a light that goes on surrounding that signal to indicate that your pressing the button has been recognized.
Not familiar with this, but
So we're guessing that's outside of Caltrans as well.
yeah.
There is one at, or was at Central and San Pablo and El Cerrito. So maybe we can check. Maybe that was a pilot or something. I don't know, but I can follow up with Matt what that is, and we can check if.
That would be great. That's because you're watching that signal box anyway. It's a great indication.
Yeah, I'm wondering if it's even experimental in terms of whether it's in the MUTCD. But okay.
Thank you for listening. Our caller recommended extending bike detection back from the intersections, which, if it can be done, would be great.
So the boxes drawn on these images here are pretty schematic. There's actually like a process of programming it out in the field where a signal technician looks at what the camera is seeing and draws in the zone. So yeah, there's definitely some flexibility to make them larger or smaller. I think with these images, we wanted to convey the intent that there would be a box for both the two-stage turn box and the bike box. I think it might just come down to sort of the trade-off between false calls by vehicles if you start to move it too much in advance of the bike box and into the vehicular waiting area. But it's also something that could be fine-tuned over time. So, yeah.
Okay. I would like to put in a vote for extending that as far as practical.
Do you know if the ones that Carrie's talking about in Emeryville, are those maybe are not video signaling? It might be, like, what are they called? The loop ones? Is that, so maybe that's what's further back, and that would probably be like a city thing. I don't know if that would be something that we could look at as like a separate thing, or I'm not sure.
I'm just trying to work within the parameters of what's been designed and budgeted. So the Washington Wiggle sign is evocative, but to me, it doesn't quite imply whether I'm doing that on the sidewalk or if I'm doing that in the street. We know that there's a tendency for cyclists to use the sidewalk and cross at the crosswalk currently. We're trying to encourage them to choose the street, and we're providing space for that. Obviously, the current sign is nice and simple, and what I'm suggesting is more difficult. But it doesn't, somehow it doesn't evoke that there is an on-street facility.
Yeah. So there would also be striping and pavement markings through the intersection to delineate the path of travel.
But you can't see if there are cars on top of them who are turning right.
Yeah. Justin, are you able to bring up the slides again and maybe go to the last one? Okay. So at Washington, there would be bike boxes on the approaches to San Pablo, and then pavement markings through the intersection to convey where the expected path of travel is, as well as bike boxes in the left turn pocket so that bikes wait out ahead of any left turners.
I'm having trouble hearing you, I'm sorry.
So at Washington, there would be bike boxes on the side streets, the bike crossing markings and sharrows through the intersection, and then the bike boxes in the left turn pockets. So if I think, can't, the intention that it's an on-street crossing, I think, would be conveyed through pavement markings.
Okay. Since we're on this slide, can you talk about the detection at this combined intersection? Is this just on a cycle of phasing, or is there detection?
So Washington would be mostly using existing detection, which I believe is mostly loops. And then at this intersection, the southernmost leg of the two Washington legs would be signalized and incorporated into the traffic signal. And sorry, what was the question?
how are self-propelled wheeled vehicles detected at the various legs of the intersection?
I believe.
And you said
it's
loop.
Detection. Yeah.
Okay. Great. Thank you.
Just to go really quickly back to my same thing with that hawk sign, I think it would work really well when I looked back at the designs again to separate out the pedestrian crossing from the cyclist crossing. It would be similar to the intersection at Virginia and Sacramento in Berkeley. They have a bike sign for cyclists to cross, and it's triggered separately than the pedestrian crossing, which has a different pedestrian sign to cross. I think that would really improve the compliance of the cars to stop, and it would also make it a much shorter stop for them when it's a cyclist, and would reduce those cyclists from, because you can just have it be green and then yellow and red. You're not doing like a long countdown for the cyclist. And so then the people who are coming like up to the intersection, they'll know that they can't cross it. It's on if they're on a bike.
Yeah.
Do you know which?
Yeah,
I'm talking about?
go through there
Yeah.
frequently. So Virginia Sacramento is a full traffic signal, not
Right.
a pedestrian hybrid beacon. I believe that having bike signals as part of a pedestrian hybrid beacon
It can't.
is
It's
not
not separate.
currently
Got it.
permissible in the MUTCD, the Manual on Uniform Traffic Control Devices.
Got it.
I hope that at some point that may change, but so within the framework of a pedestrian hybrid beacon, sort of bikes and pedestrians are both following
Got it.
the ped head, which means the signal timing needs to support both.
Got it. Should we
Anything else?
move forward?
I have one question, if it's within the scope, completely understandable if not, but at December slides, we also talked about San Pablo and Solano. So if at all possible at this stage, add bike loop detection at that intersection. If not, maybe something we can consider for a future project.
On the Solano approaches,
Yes,
yeah,
to cross San Pablo.
okay. Can take a look. It may depend in part on just the existing wiring of the traffic signal and what it can support in terms of whether it can be done within the existing conduits or whether it requires new kind of underground wiring to support more things, but we can take a look at whether that could be easily added.
Great, thank you.
So can I move, does anybody else have questions? Can I move us to approve the Transportation Commission recommend that the City Council authorize the staff to issue an encroachment permit for construction of the San Pablo Avenue Parallel Bike Improvements Project elements within Albany to the Alameda County Transportation Commission and their designated contractor?
Second.
Roll?
Commissioner Barnes,
Yes.
Commissioner Kerr,
Yes.
Vice Chair McCroskey,
Yes.
Commissioner Zupa,
Yes.
Commissioner Chair Hiley.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Thank you so much.
Thank you very
That
much.
was really great. Thank
Yeah,
you.
really helpful.
Yeah.
Great to learn from the other cities' conversations. All right, item 4.2 is expenditure of sugar sweetened beverage tax. Turn it over for the presentation.
Thank you, Chair. So this item is an annual item. In 2016, Albany voters approved Measure 01, Ordinance 2016-02, establishing a tax on sugar-sweetened beverages. As included in the ordinance, the tax generates general fund revenue that the City Council aims to apply towards specific purposes related to health and well-being, and approved expenditures are incorporated into the city's annual operating budget. So this item is regarding the use of an estimated $225,000 in tax proceeds. The process is for the commission to submit a recommendation to the city council, which would then be presented along with recommendations from other entities at an upcoming study session, tentatively scheduled for, I believe, the second meeting in April. So prior year program recommendation from the commission is shown here. The commission recommended funding the bike safety program at the $35,000 to increase from elementary school bike safety to include older student and community-based training for adults new to e-biking. The commission also recommended funding the crossing guard program from other city revenue sources than the sugar sweetened beverage tax. Last year's council approved expenditure plan included 4 programs. The largest cost by far is the school crossing guard program. And all of these 4 programs have received funding over multiple years at this point. School crossing guard program has been provided by the city retaining the services of all city management services since the 2018-2019 school year. The program provides for safe crossing for students going to and from Albany schools. The bike safety program provides intensive education and training courses for bicycling to elementary grade students. Students learn a suite of skills for becoming more confident and safe riders. The program is offered through a nonprofit, Cycles of Change, and has been funded with sugar sweetened beverage revenue since the 2019-2020 fiscal year. And some details on that. Costs for the upcoming fiscal year for the one-day drive your bike sessions for 5th grade students at all 3 elementary schools would be close to $24,000. That's 3% cost increase over last year to match costs. Separate funding for bike education from Alameda County Transportation Commission has covered bike rodeos at each of the elementary schools. That's been paired with the city investment over the last several years. There has also been a budget decrease in Cycle of Change's scope with Alameda County Transportation Commission, reducing the number of bike rodeos funded from, I believe, 32 down to 28. Rodeos are booked first come, first serve, so it's unclear whether there will be an impact on the availability for Albany schools in the coming year. The Albany Swims program is provided through Albany Unified School District as well and teaches young children to swim, targeting primary grades with a comprehensive program to improve water safety and fitness in children that are most at risk of drowning. And the 4th program, the Albany Move and Groove, is a one-day event that provides outdoor exercise and music to promote physical wellness. It's a 5-kilometer course around Albany High School and Memorial Park, and participants walk, roll, run while being entertained by live band stationed around the course. And so with that, staff is seeking a recommendation from the commission to City Council for the use of sugar sweetened beverage tax proceeds for the 2027 fiscal year, and open for questions and discussion.
Right. Any questions from the commission?
I have 2 questions. One is, I believe last year we asked the city to talk with the city council and the school district to kind of come up with a long-term plan for funding the crossing guard program, and we discussed like that this is not a long-term solution to have this money be funding the program. Has that conversation occurred, and do you have any updates on like a longer-term plan of funding cross guards?
That recommendation was conveyed with the commission's recommendation and funding to the council at the study session. I'm not aware of any changes to how the program's been funded at this point.
Thank you. My second question is, can you talk a little bit more about the Albany swims? I have kids who are in these grades and I've never heard about it. Do you know how many kids how many kids benefited from that program last year? Or how is the city or this program identifying kids, and what kind of instruction is this?
I don't have a lot more information on the program. I'd refer there at the last council study session from last year, there probably was inclusion of their mid-year report from that program, like I received from the bike safety education program as part of that. That might provide more information. My understanding is it targets students that are in the free and reduced lunch, or particular subset of students that would benefit from support for the swim education is my recollection, but.
Got it. Is it basically like a scholarship to enroll in the Albany swim lessons for like a reduced fee or a free fee, or is this like a totally separate program that is run separate from the Albany swim lessons that occur at the Aquatic Center?
I'm not sure how it's delivered. I'd have to get into that.
Any other questions?
Do you expect the cost of the crossing guard program to rise?
I would expect our program saw a 3% cost increase for, our program, the bicycle education program, the one that I manage the contract for, saw a 3% increase for next fiscal year. I would expect the crossing guard program likely to have some increase as well. I have not seen what that number is.
Do you have any information about the other programs for Albany Swims and Move and Groove about any cost increases?
I don't know.
Any other questions from the commission? All right, we'll start public comment on this item. If there's anyone in the audience or online?
No hands raised.
All right, bring it back for discussion.
I can start. I have concerns that, we're not solving this crossing guard program, and I think it's a really important program. I support us all having crossing guards, but I feel like it's not sustainable that like a majority of our sugar sweetened beverage tax money is going to that. I don't know. So I'm not sure what the solution is, if like maybe, but the amount of money that we get, in theory, the amount of money that we get from the sugar sweetened beverage tax should be decreasing each year as people are changing their consumption habits. And so it's really not sustainable that we have this program only funded through this tax. That's my thought on the matter. Another thing I have been thinking about, it would be really beneficial to, or like a place that some of this money would be really impactful is like a supplemental funding for our school meal program for the kids. The school meal programs are severely underfunded from the state. A lot of, I would have to look it up, but nationally, a number of, what is it, like half of the kids or something, get a majority of their food each day from school meal programs. I know that Albany has a lower percentage of students who are on free and reduced meal programs, but you know, I think that that would be a really great use of some of this funding, is to like support and provide more funding to the school meal programs. Anyways, that's my 2 cents. Let me see if I can find it while other people are commenting. In Albany, I don't know what the number is, but.
Well, I think we're asking questions at the moment, actually.
Oh, no, we're ready for it when there were no public comments.
Well, there were no, I'm sorry.
Problem?
So this is a 10-year-old tax, and for 10 years, it has basically been dedicated to supporting the crossing guards. And I've raised many of the same concerns that Commissioner Zaba has over the years. I don't see it changing. And my understanding is that all of this money is from the general fund. So the sugar sweetened beverage tax goes to the general fund, and then money is paid out. So it's really not a clean accounting system, if you will, of what we're spending our money on. We would need to pay for crossing guards regardless. We're simply identifying the sugar sweetened beverage tax as a source of revenue that supports that, as well as any of the other programs that are. Justin, correct me if I'm wrong on that. I don't want to imply that that's absolutely true. I believe that's the case.
That's correct. It's general fund revenue. It has, as part of the measure, prescribed this process for discussing.
Right. It identifies that the revenue would go to health-related programs. And I was one of the people that was involved in crafting this and writing it originally in 2016. I'm perfectly happy with it to continue to sponsor crossing guards. It is absolutely a responsibility of the city to make sure that kids get across the street safely, whether it comes from sugar sweetened beverage or general revenue funds or wherever it comes from. We have to do that. So I think it doesn't serve us to sort of split hairs about that in a way. Yeah. So I'm happy with this as it's written, and I just wanted to add that commentary.
I too have been concerned about why the crossing guards get shoved into this bucket. And I'm not going to worry about it this year because we're in the middle of a 2-year budget. And complaining to city council doesn't actually make any sense at the moment. But next winter, after we have a newly seated city council and they're going to start the budget process again, before they ask us later about the sugar sweetened beverage tax, that's the time to talk to your council member and ask about the future. Mm-hmm. So I'm going to put that aside. But I agree. Funding school meals, or after-school programs that involve sports, sports teams that aren't part of the main body of the school sports program are all great candidates for, I think, for these funds. And we don't get to actually do that. And we're looking at basically using up, if you figure a 3% roughly increase in the crossing guard costs, then just between the crossing guards and the cycle training, the Learn to Ride program, then you've hit the projected, or you're very close to the projected 225K, with about 5K left over, maybe. I don't feel it makes sense for us to address the Albany Swims program or the Move and Groove. Those are kind of out of our purview. Albany Swims is borderline, but we don't actually, well, we do have waterways. Be that as may, for myself, I'm leaving that one out, but I'm definitely interested in recommending that the council fund the crossing guards and the cycle training program.
Yeah, I'll pass.
Yeah, I'd just like to state in agreement that not a sustainable solution for the crossing guard program to be funded. We've talked about only two of many, many great programs that could be funded, and a large portion of the tax is going to the crossing guard program, and we can't even really talk about those other programs. So it's disappointing, but it's an important program. I agree, and I hear the constraints of the reality right now. So we'll just remember that for the future, and hopefully next year we'll be having this conversation and able to talk about those additional programs.
Yeah. I think in the future, it would be really great if this almost functioned as like a startup kind of bucket, that people who are, like, need some startup funds to, develop a sports program or develop something, they can tap into it for a year or two and then, move on. So that, then that will also help us with this kind of moving target of like how much money we have in this pocket, in this bucket. But yeah, I agree. We recommend the crossing guard program and the bike safety program.
I move that we recommend the crossing guard and bike safety programs for funding through the sugar sweetened beverage tax to City Council.
I'll second.
Can I add some?
A friendly amendment, sure, yeah. What
Friendly
do you
amendment.
recommend?
I move that the commission recommends the city council to, I'm going to stumble over my words here. I was going to add the dollar amount if that would be necessary or helpful.
I don't think we know how much money we're going to have yet because it's for next year, right? Or is this last year?
I don't know the dollar amount for the crossing guard program, but I do have the dollar amount for continuing the bike education in the 3 elementary schools. So because that's at a higher level than was funded last year, if you want to communicate that, what the full funding for that would be.
Why don't I go ahead and restate? So let me get the number up on screen so I don't muff it. And I'm going to round up. I move that we recommend the sugar sweetened beverage tax revenue fund the crossing guards with an expected cost of living or cost of increase in cost of program, and the, get the name right.
Or what if we framed it as like our priority is like first fund the bike safety program, then any remaining funds goes to the cross guard program, and then if there's still any remaining funds, they go to other things. Because there might, if we can't quite cover the crossing guard program, hopefully the money would go from somewhere else. But we want to make sure the bike safety program is fully funded because it's unlikely that it gets supplemented somewhere else. So
Another friendly amendment, okay.
the
Yeah,
exact numbers.
great. Let me start that way. I move that we recommend that the City Council fund the bike safety program at approximately $25,000 for fiscal year 26-27. Is that correct? Did I get that right? Okay. And with the remaining funds, they put them towards the crossing guard program, which is expected to have an increase over last year. Okay, yeah. That works for me. You want to second that?
I second that.
All right. Grill?
Commissioner Barnes,
Yes.
Commissioner Kerr,
Yes.
Vice Chair McCroskey,
Yes.
Commissioner Zuba,
Yes.
and Chair Hiley.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Thanks for pushing.
All right.
Yeah, that's good.
Thank you for the presentation and the conversation. Next item is for 3 sidewalk program repair criteria update.
James Sorelli will present this item.
Good evening. I'm here to talk about the sidewalk program and the repair criteria update. So I'll talk a little bit about the program, some brief overview, and a quick update before I get into the latest survey, which informs our current proposed repair criteria update, and ending with a recommendation. So anytime we talk about sidewalks, it's always important to preface that although we have a funding measure, the legal responsibility for maintenance and repair of the sidewalks hasn't changed. It's still California law and city code that the property owner is responsible for it. But we do have a program that consists of 3 major elements: our repairs, our shaving, and then the citywide survey. And this is currently all funded by Measure C. In the past, Measure P1 only funded the repairs part, but now the way it's set up is everything is funded, all 3 elements are now funded by this parcel tax. And it's in place for another 10 years, set to sunset in 2035. The repair element is pretty straightforward. It's the typical removal of concrete and replace back with concrete. Shaving is where we shave less than 2-inch vertical offsets to remove tripping hazards. This is a little bit different than grinding. It's more like horizontal cutting. And the reason is when you grind, you're actually damaging the concrete. You're in a sense pulverizing it, and there's some structural loss if you're not careful with it. Versus shave, you cut it, it's a very smooth, you'll notice it's a bit of, especially when it's fresh, it's a very smooth surface. And the city is divided into 5 zones, and 1 zone is shaved per year. And then we have our survey that we do every 5 years. This is all of Albany's sidewalks and our Class 1 paths, which includes, Buchanan Bikeway and Ohlone Greenway. And we use that data to scope both these annual repairs and our shaving locations. Here's a timeline of the repairs. This program kind of kicked off shortly after 2016 when Measure P1's passed. We've periodically updated the prioritization criteria. And it's a little hard to see with the color on the screen there, but around 2022 is when we moved away from that complaint-driven database where essentially we were only informed of repairs if they were call-ins or staff noticed it. Versus now where we have this citywide survey, so we have a more data-driven approach rather than calling in and trying to, only folks who call in will end up on that list. Measure C was passed back in '24, shortly after council updated the sidewalk repair policy, and we're here shortly after we completed the most recent survey. So under the program, we've repaired roughly 525 locations. 297 of them particularly were when we took that database approach from Phase 5 onward. On the shaving side, we shaved down around 6,500 tripping hazards over the past 5 years. And as of last year, we've officially gone through the entire city, all 5 zones in the city. And there'll be a map shortly, but we'll be restarting that cycle again this year. And lastly, we just completed our 2025 comprehensive survey a couple months ago, and the next survey will be scheduled for 2030. So here's a map of where we've done all our repair locations in the city. The kind of the lighter blue teal is Phase 11, which actually just poured its last concrete this week. We've almost hit every single block in the city where there's, sidewalks. And there's still plenty of work to do. We've made a big dent, which I'll show shortly, in our sidewalk hazards. And so this is the shaving map. We started Zone 1. We've done each zone, and now we're going back to Zone 1 to repeat the process. So for the comprehensive sidewalk survey, this is consulted out to Beneficial Designs. They specialize in ADA compliance for public right-of-ways. They actually have some proprietary tools and assessments that they do specifically for this. They're also the ones who did the 2020 surveys, which has been very helpful for apples to apples comparison. And these results are used to update our GIS database for existing conditions. And it is important that I kind of preface how the survey boundaries work. So on like our major corridors like Solano and San Pablo, where concrete is specifically poured or in place from curb to roughly building face, that's the pedestrian circulation path. So they're actually looking at all of that. And even in the tree wells they're checking, and that's more or less to confirm whether there's a drop off from the tree well or if there's a grate, whether it's flush. And it's important that I preface this because the way residential streets are done are a little bit different. But even though they fully do survey this pedestrian circulation path, the actual part of the sidewalk that has to meet the stringent ADA and PROAG, public right-of-way accessibility guidelines, is just like, this is for show a bit because this might not be exactly it, but this would be the pedestrian access route, where they do need to meet that stringent guidelines, and there's some more flexibilities typically in a furniture zone. Our local residential streets, they're surveyed kind of just on the primary sidewalk. And the main reason that we do that is because, this is really the limits to the pedestrian circulation path in reality, because, that planter strip is constantly, split by driveways, planter strips, bushes, mulch, concrete paths potentially. That space is not wholly dedicated to the pedestrian use. At any point, if there's a building permit or an encroachment permit where they can remove that concrete and do what's approved by the city. So we don't, in essence, consider that part of the circulation path, and it's not captured in the survey on these residential streets because, again, from curb to back of sidewalk, it's not all intended for pedestrians. It just happens that some people have concrete there, some others don't. And as such, the pedestrian access route's actually that full width. So that whole full width does need to typically meet those stringent ADA and PROAG guidelines.
Question. Yeah, full width is the, I'm blanking on the term, but technically, although this is, correct me if I'm wrong, if it's, the sidewalk is the homeowner's property, but there is a, blanking on the term.
Easement?
Thank you. Yes, there's an easement. So is that width there the width of the easement, the legal easement?
No, so actually the property lines are often 2 to 6 feet back from the sidewalk. The public right-of-way is fully public right-of-way. It's just that homeowners are responsible for the maintenance of that sidewalk. But it is fully within the right-of-way. It's not on private property in any sense, or an easement on private property. If if we survey, when we do our professional, projects where they come out and survey, the line is, let me see if I can draw it. The line is typically right around here, probably.
Yeah, that's what it is at my house.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and like on Marin, and this isn't a great picture to compare it to, but it would be something like this, where it's actually more like 5 or 6 feet back from the back of walk.
Just as an aside, it's an issue because in some cases to get around big tree roots, like if the camphor trees, they will curve the sidewalk way into that depth, and homeowners think that's their lawn, but it's not really.
Correct. So the features that come out of this survey, this staff report that we wrote and available online goes into more detail, and I do want to keep it kind of high level because it's just very mundane information, but it's the real thing is to understand kind of what the buckets they fall in. Mm-hmm. So the deficiencies data is where we actually have a quantitative measurement of some kind of deficiency, like there's an offset of a ½ an inch. Then we have our root issues where there's an issue with that segment of sidewalk, like no pedestrian access route means the sidewalk ends suddenly, which is pretty rare. Mostly this pertains to the hillside neighborhoods. No transition, there's no curb ramp or blood-in transition at the corner. So these are more root issues. Then protrusions are something like an obstruction, like there's a utility pole in the middle of the sidewalk. Or if it's object maintenance, you have trees or bushes encroaching onto the sidewalk. So you're not getting that actual 5-foot minimum width requirement. Sorry, 4-foot minimum width requirement. And then lastly, there's another bucket, which kind of these three, they don't really cleanly fall into any of the other ones. Change in level is actually a city-specific feature. This is where we've done shaving, and you do get, you may have noticed some of the shavings do come up with some funky grades. So we wanted to kind of have them measure that to get a better sense of it. At this time, we're not working with this data in the repair phase, but it is good to understand. And despite it, may not, by the technical sense, be meeting Pro-Ag or ADA, it is meeting that Pro-Ag or ADA because it's considered a transitional segment where we've done a repair, and it's the exact definitions I'm blanking on, but it allows us to have a higher grade because it's a repair zone, and it's a transitional segment where we've kind of addressed an issue, but unless we do a full-on removal and repair, we're not going to get like that perfect grade. And there's grates, which are tree grates. If they're not flush, that's called out, or there's an issue with it. And then there's utility box lids, which are self-explanatory. There's an issue with the utility vault. So this is kind of a one-on-one comparison of the count we saw with those deficiency data, that first bucket. So we've done a significant amount in terms of reducing our deficiencies in the city. Particularly with the vertical discontinuities, this is kind of broken up into different quarter-inch buckets. And that shaving program's done a massive, significant job at bringing down the amount of vertical discontinuities we're seeing, especially under 1 inch, 1 1/4 inch. We've done some work on the higher end, but obviously, there's still work to be done. And I also like to use this as a comparison. So phases 5 through 8 of the original, the first rounds of repair data, we use what we called a critical repair criteria, where that no best path of travel. I'm not going to get into the details with this because we'll talk about it a little bit more. But essentially, when we use that critical repair criteria and we applied it now, we have maybe a third of a round of repairs worth of repairs to do. A third of locations that are typically in a recycle, versus if you applied this in 2020, it was 4 cycles worth of repairs. So to get kind of more into details and what the repair criteria is, we're using that deficiency bucket, those 5 features. So vertical discontinuity, this one's pretty self-explanatory. It's just a vertical offset perpendicular to the path of travel. And if it's 2 inches or more, it meets criteria. Linear discontinuity, where it's the same, but it's parallel to the path of travel, and if it's 2 inches or more. Horizontal openings, this one is essentially an opening in the sidewalk, a hole. This one was a little trickier because there's 3 attributes to it. There's the depth, the length, and the width. To try and kind of to mirror a bit how we're working with the vertical offsets, we used a 2-inch depth for now to kind of prioritize those issues. Then there's the no best path to travel. This is essentially where you have 2 features at like a single location. So rather than kind of overcrowding the data and say there's 2 vertical discontinuities and a horizontal opening right here, no best path to travel captures that there's a lot of issues in this particular spot. And then they also, on top of that, quantitatively give you the data for those issues. So this also, if there's a 2-inch vertical offset captured in that, or if there's an 8.33% grade or more, it meets this proposed repair criteria. And that grade is specifically the maximum allowable grade for ramps or curb ramps. So it's a good spot to kind of call like, hey, this is a good spot for repair. And lastly is non-planar pedestrian access routes. These are features that have non-compliant grades or cross slopes, and we're using the 8.33% grade again to capture where we think a repair would be best suited. So using that, these are all the locations around the city. They do need to still be field verified. That's typically done in design. But there, I just want to point out that there are several of these that would be outside of the typical remove and replace. First, we have asphalt sidewalks and sidewalks and paths. And that's because these contractors, we typically go out, they do concrete work. So these would be better suited for different CIPs. And they kind of talked about a little bit more in the staff report, but the Thousand Oaks, for example, that's already a CIP. The Buchanan Bikeway, well, actually, it's not the Buchanan Bikeway, it's the Buchanan Sidewalk one. That would be probably, we'd roll it into the Trails Maintenance CIP project. I forget what the exact name is, but because that's doing asphalt work, it's a good place to do it. And the one that's not identified is actually the asphalt paths parallel to the Ohlone Greenway. And, that's realistically a park trail, not really a true sidewalk. There's a bit more to those than a typical sidewalk that needs to be considered. So it's a bit more for transparency that they were captured here, because really because they're not really a true sidewalk, they're a park trail, we wouldn't really put it in this program, because when we do park trails, we have to consider the larger scope of what park improvements would be needed, or what activations are desired in the park, and kind of plan the trail accordingly. So really, this is not something that we would be part either of the sidewalk program. The next is any missing sidewalks. There's the two on Hillside that met the criteria. These are outside of the scope because although it is putting back concrete, on Hillside it's a lot more complicated because we need to better understand property boundaries. They're a little funky up there, which may require us to change curb lines to actually get the path in. And because it's on the hill, there's structural constraints we have to think of. It's not just putting back a 4-inch sidewalk. There'll be some kind of retaining structure that probably needs to go in. So that design alone is a lot more cost and time intensive than just a typical repair element. So it would need to be captured in an unidentified CIP as of right now. And then lastly is some more complex ones. So these are ones on Jackson, Taft, and Hillside in the Hillside neighborhood, where the sidewalk's pretty narrow as is, and it's actually, the way it was designed, it's a combination driveway approach sidewalk. So even if we were to kind of fix these discrete issues, you still have those extreme cross slope changes because the sidewalk was built also as a driveway approach, and you can't really fix that without either significantly widening the sidewalk or kind of thinking a bit more out of the box. And I say out of the box because actually in the Albany's 2035 general plan, these corridors are actually identified for different different types of how you would build a pedestrian access route. Potentially putting in the street and then modifying it so that it's some kind of protected walk or something like that. The verbiage I don't recall the verbiage, but the staff report does pinpoint the exact I think it's called a policy in the general plan, if you are curious what the exact verbiage is. So long story short, these were pulled from just the basic repair element so that we could focus on what is essentially just removal and replacement of concrete in the most cost-effective manner. We identified 167 locations. It'll probably be split between 2 repair cycles. We're looking at doing phase 12 this year and phase 13, next year. And then we'd be back to update the prioritization criteria in early 2028. So with that, our recommendation is that the Transportation Commission recommends that staff proceed with the sidewalk repair criteria as presented tonight.
Thank you. Any questions from the commission?
Yeah,
have a-
go ahead. You go.
Right. So ordered. There was a case that I saw where, there was a clean section of sidewalk and it was breaking up, and I called Public Works and said, wow, deal, and they went and checked it out, and it turns out that was a homeowner improvement. So I take it homeowner improvements of sidewalks is still allowed, right? It's under the law. This, can be required, is required, I'm not sure which. Is there any rules? Does the city oversee these projects at all? And then secondary question is, can you put rebar in sidewalks? That would make them more durable, but I've heard they cause problems.
Is anyone, all that's really required is a licensed contractor and an encroachment permit to do a proper repair. We just ask that because we want the sidewalk to meet city standards. And yes, you can use rebar, but typically because the depth of our standard sidewalks is 4 inches, we don't, it's really not good cover for rebar, and it doesn't really structurally change it much. That would be more suited maybe for like a 6-inch driveway pour. But yes, rebar can definitely be added. And even though the standard is a 4-inch, there's nothing technically against them putting a thickened 6-inch with rebar in if they wanted to.
Okay, thank you.
We can carry on the course around the table here. Thank you. Good presentation and helpful. My first question, there are 2 questions. My first question has to do with you've completed a survey. The next survey is 2030, I believe you said. If something comes up in between your survey, the survey cycles, does it get fed back into the plan, or is it fall onto the homeowner to repair because it didn't hit the survey? How does it work if there's something not identified in the survey until the next survey comes around?
As long as something that's in there, that's out there meets the criteria, that's what we just follow the criteria. Trees move, they move sidewalks. A couple of years, you can move that 1/2 inch. That's enough that it meets the repair criteria. And if it changes and we're notified, and we would, capture it. And that has happened in the past phases where, yes, the survey said it was 1.7 inches, but in 3.5 years later, it actually was 2 inches. And then we said, okay, we'll roll it in because we were notified of it.
There's an active element to the process. It doesn't just get fixed in time. That's good to know. Thank you. My second question is kind of a little bit off topic, but something that I'm curious about, and maybe you can enlighten me. When there's a blue curb marking on the street, and that's designated as disabled access, is there any requirement under PROAG or any other recommendations that there is a way to get to the sidewalk from there? Or do you kind of park in an island and hope that the traffic doesn't hit you coming out of your car? There are places in the city where we have blue parking strips, and you have to cross a mulched, uneven surface to get to the sidewalk. What requirements might cover that?
So there's 2 things. There's truly what is a PROAG required accessible parking spot, but it sounds like the ones you're talking to are more what we paint blue as a courtesy, because it was requested by an adjacent, homeowner. Justin, please jump in at any point. But it's kind of more of a courtesy spot. So if they want those, if they want it to be truly accessible, they would have to kind of conduct the improvements on their own, since it's a courtesy spot. Unlike on a commercial corridor, where if we have a certain amount of, I think they call it designated or metered parking, we are required to have a minimum amount of accessible parking spots, and that may be whether it's more like it's next to the curb ramp, or if it's more like the library style where it's like a pull-in.
So a blue curb in front of a church on Marin would be probably a request that was made by the church itself, and further access would be at the behest, at the responsibility of that entity.
That's correct. Typically, it's at the request of residential. We have had a few requests from institutions. We are not providing business or organizations accessibility requirements. We're not trying to meet that in the public right-of-way. But we are, to the extent we can facilitate folks accessing other places, we try to do that. But there is a distinction. It's one that cities are talking about in terms of the latest guidance and making sure that we can still provide this as a courtesy, because it does facilitate folks generally accessing their homes as needed, but it is not meeting requirements that would be on us if we were constructing an accessible parking space, like at the community center or like the middle school did in front of that is what you would need to do to meet accessible parking requirements for on-street.
Sounds like there's a little bit of gray in the blue.
I don't have any questions.
Good.
Thanks, by the way. Depth of hole, is that to dirt?
No, it's typically it's pulverized concrete, so it's typically just concrete. Could be dirt if it's a very deep hole or a thin sidewalk. It really just depends on the sidewalk. It could be, but it would typically be dirt base or concrete. But it's a hole still.
Right. So if it's a hole of any depth that ends in dirt, shouldn't it then qualify?
It would typically probably be at least 2 inches.
Okay.
Because our standard sidewalks, standard sidewalks are 4-inch depth, but I have noticed, especially on the southeast side of town, you're sometimes lucky if it's more than 2.5 inches.
Okay. I've been following this for a long time, and I have my own pet spots that I've been watching, and there is a hole that I've been watching, and it's unclear to me whether dirt has developed in the hole or whether it's dirt through. I'll have to go poke around. How are your numbers comparing in the prospective zones? Are you finding the usual number of spots to work on? You've stuck with the 2-inch offset. What would happen if we changed that to a minimum of 1-inch offset?
One of the reasons we don't like to start with something like a 1-inch is because anything that's less than 2-inch with a standard sidewalk is shaveable. You can typically shave about half the depth of a sidewalk before it's structurally kind of getting too thin. It does get a little bit more complicated where we're having non-standard sidewalk depths. So that's kind of why we prioritize repairs at a higher depth, offset 2 inches. The other reason is, we only have so much money to do repairs per year. Yeah. So if we kind of throw in a really ambitious criteria, actually managing it will be quite difficult, or even being able to afford doing it in a reasonable timeline could be difficult. So that's why we kind of like to shave it off. I don't want to use the word shaving, it's the wrong term here. But we like to, start from the top of the pyramid and work our way down.
Hence my question about how the numbers this year of repairs compare to previous phases.
It's difficult to say because, it all depends just how you query the data. I think really the best option, the best option was that critical one that we use for phase 5 through 8. We were talking about 200 repairs probably. Now it's like 20. So I think that's a kind of a good way to show that, things are looking good. And it's actually, we're in this, it's, I guess, a good spot to be where prioritizing repairs is going to be more and more difficult, just because of the nuance of if it's not too bad, how do you say which one gets the priority? Right now, we are still in a good spot, but I think in 2028, that one, when we come back, that one will be a trickier one to talk about. It might, and probably, behoove some more discussion. Or it might be easy, I don't know. There's a lot of data in that database.
The trees will grow.
Yes, and that's an important one. Despite it being concrete, this is actually quite a dynamic system.
There's one location I've seen where the path of travel was filled in with asphalt instead of cement by presumably the homeowner. Is that technically allowed?
It's not our standard. I'd have to know exactly where to better understand it, but it's not our standard. We ask to pour back concrete. But I mean, it technically does, as long as it's level and non-slip, stable, it meets ADA requirements. But we generally prefer concrete because asphalt tends to be more flexible. So it, especially if it's near a tree, it doesn't keep that stable, firm surface as long-term as a concrete surface would.
Thanks. Too many windows. Yeah, too many windows.
Oh my gosh. Thank you, James. You mentioned that some of the projects that would not meet this criteria, like the asphalt near Buchanan, could be part of the trail project. Do you know what the other types of projects, how those would be addressed? The missing sidewalks, like on Albany Hill, and complex non-standard projects?
At least for the ones James identified where sidewalks don't exist, we've tried to specify a number of those in the active transportation plan as potential projects. Most of those are at a scale that they would be CIP projects and would need to be prioritized amongst other CIP projects. As he mentioned, there are, I think, some that other programs, like ones that are dealing with bikeways, we'll tackle a few of the others, but they're the one that, wasn't part of ATP discussion to date that James was referencing was where the driveway slopes and sidewalk zone at some of the hillside neighborhoods. It's not a sidewalk with the pole obstructions like the hillside one that was part of ATP identification, but is one that's been identified in other plans.
What's the opportunity for addressing those situations?
They would also be needing to be prioritized as completing pedestrian network or completing accessible pedestrian paths through CIP projects.
CIP, okay.
There's a new technology coming out in a few years where you press a button and the bottom of the pole just disappears and you walk through. Kidding. I'm sorry. It's getting late. I'm sorry.
All right, with that, open it up to public comment. Any in the audience? Great. Come on up. You got 3 minutes.
Okay, great. James, I'm Mike White. We've had a couple of emails over the past couple of weeks. And in the earlier survey, our house didn't qualify for the repair, but it seems like now it might. But I wasn't clear from our emails if it actually had. So I'm wondering if the new map is now available through the city GIS system.
We're going to answer your questions after you make your full statement.
I'm done.
Okay.
Thanks.
Sorry.
Thank you. We'll note the question to be answered.
And we have one comment online.
Great.
Go ahead.
Hi, my name is Brian Martin. I wanted to thank the city and the commission for working on this. It's been such a great positive thing in the city. Hillside is of importance to me living in the neighborhood, and I did appreciate staff talking about some of the complexities and that it's more difficult than your typical repair. I was just wondering if staff could reiterate what the plan is for addressing Hillside. Is that are there some things that can be done with the sidewalk repair funds and system, or is it all things that are going to have to be with CIP level things? Thanks.
And if you're wanting to speak on this item, use the raise your hand feature. One more.
More?
Go ahead.
Sure. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Yeah, this is Richard Rago. I sent you folks an email today regarding 966 Talbot, along with some photographs where there's a significant tripping hazard with the tree roots doing the lifting and doing quite a bit of damage. I'm wondering if you had a chance to review that email and review those photos to see what we can do about that. I was able to get a hold of Mark Hurley, I think it was a couple weeks ago, and he came by to take a look, and he had the city put some temporary AC cutback in that depression to help mitigate any tripping hazards of school children. That we're only about a half a block from the school, and we get a lot of kids traveling that, parents, people, pushing their kids along in smaller kids. They're taking their school age kids there. So it's quite a problem. And I wanted to see if you've had a chance to review that to see if we can get that in this year's program.
All right. Thank you. Thank you for the comments. Does staff have any answers for the questions that were asked?
So for the first one, Mr. White, the main reason I said it's not confirmed yet is just we just have to physically go out there and look at it after it is on the map. There's just sometimes, the measurements are slightly off or they've been repaired. Your photos clearly show that it probably isn't. We just cannot 100% say till we just go out there during our design phase and confirm it. But again, your photos, from the photos, it does look like it. And that one would be in phase 13, so Albany Terrace, yes. So that would be next year. It'd be in the repaired.
And the design phase would be next year as well?
Not sure. I mean, it's more the repair phase are cycled out that just because of funding purposes, but we do the designs in-house. It's a very lean machine, this program, so it can be designed.
Don't overpromise, but
yeah, just
some indication would be
the
great.
design doesn't have as a stringent timeline. It's more flexible because we're the ones doing it.
So what would you tell our resident?
I mean, realistically, when we would put this back on consent, because we probably need, we do, as always, per the policy, we do need to send letters to the homeowner that their property is being considered. That would likely be in early 27 to send that letter.
Thank you.
Was the question about the availability of the GIS map answered?
The map that's in this presentation and the staff report, that is the map that it's the same map that we have, that we were using for repairs. It has that address on there. It's just, again, we just haven't physically gone there to confirm it. Next is Brian Martin. I think I'll let you talk a bit on Brian Martin's, but before, I think just one thing to point out with the sidewalk program, it's a very lean machine. Like I said, we don't, when we get into more complicated repairs, it can quickly draw down what limited funding we have in this program. And I think really what makes this program so very effective is a lot of it, actually it's entirely done in-house other than the construction. So once, we have to bring in structural review, property, surveys, we're talking consultants, we're talking consultant monies, we're talking we're talking a lot more money that typically goes into this project.
Yeah, just to follow up specifically to the question, the identified sections on Hillside and other blocks in the Hillside neighborhood that the presentation highlighted as outside of the scope would not be part of the sidewalk repair program. Those will require design, will require larger cost than the sidewalk program would bear.
Last was Mr. Rago's. So the reason that one was not captured under this current repair criteria, because as I've mentioned, we're focused on the sidewalk path. That one, there's some issues with the sidewalk, but it was not enough to bring it up to repair. The issue is actually that the sidewalk there and the driveway is slightly settling while the driveway approach is lifting. And we typically, the survey doesn't really consider that part of the pedestrian circulation path. We don't use Measure C1 funding, Measure C funding for those types of repairs. But, this is the forum to talk if there's any type of recommendations to the criteria to address like these kind of issues. This would be the spot if the commission recommends putting some kind of more language to the criteria.
Great, thank you. All right, open to discussion?
Actually, I have one more question.
Absolutely, anything.
Before we go to discussion. James, thank you again for your report. I'm wondering if there are ballpark figures of how much the sidewalk repair tax brings in and how much is spent each year. Are we talking $1 million or $250,000 or what ballpark are we in?
I don't have the numbers in front of me. Definitely not $1 million. We're talking significantly less than that. I would say, most repair cycles, the Measure C does give more funding than Measure P1 does, so we are able to do more, which is why we're looking probably double the size of the repair phases, the annual repair phases, but we're still only, most repair phases in the past have been between 100 and 150K. Maybe we can double that spend on the current repair cycles, but that's still, less than $500,000.
Aside from money, are there any obstacles to getting these repairs expedited? Sounds like money is not the issue.
Expediting them is tricky because if we do expedite them, it requires more staff time to do, which we just don't have, which would mean we need a consultant to do the design. The more repairs we do in a repair phase will mean, we might not be able to inspect it internally, which means we'll need a construction management team to come do it. So we could attempt to expedite them, but there is a trade-off in, we're keeping it a very lean machine because everything's in-house, which is very rare for our CIP projects. And if we do try to make it bigger, we're losing some of that efficiency to other external costs.
I'm assuming one of the advantages of having the city do this is there's economies of scale on hiring concrete contractors. So does that mean you have to wait to batch projects together before you have a concrete contractor come out? How's that work?
Yeah, to bid it out, we aim for a project that's greater than 100K. There is an economy of scale. The more, it wouldn't be very efficient if we were to kind of just send a few work orders at a time. Costs would come in higher. One of the things that are ideal with doing an annual cycle is you can capture all like the more larger figures like mobilization, water pollution control as like one item, and then they give a flat number for just square footage. Versus if we're doing small, like shooting out work orders maybe once a month, we lose a lot of that efficiency because they have to hike the prices for that mobilization. And vice versa, if the project gets too large, we lose out on the smaller contractors who are able to bid more competitively, and we may end up actually with losing more repair potential because our prices are just higher, because we're only getting larger contractors.
I'm sorry, that was a question, but anyway, my comment is, I think this has been, I've followed it over the years, a remarkably successful program, to the extent that the city of Berkeley apparently has looked at it and decided they want to do something similar. That's what I've heard. That's something you've heard?
No, but I feel like you have mentioned actually this before at the last time we was here.
Could be. My apologies if that's the case. But anyway, good work. That's what I mean to say.
Kudos.
I'm done.
Okay. Go for it.
Yes, I too am, I think it's a great program. I was involved with getting the original tax on the ballot and passed, and have enjoyed watching the success of the program over the years, and you're coming on and helping drive it home. So thank you. It's always been clear to me that the point of the project is to maintain the public right-of-way, the constructed public path through our neighborhoods and through our retail areas. And unfortunately, that leaves out things outside of the path. And Mr. Rego, I actually visited your sidewalk this afternoon at 966 Talbot. I was having a little trouble telling the difference between which of your pictures were 412 Stanage and which were 966 Talbot. I didn't get a chance to visit 412 Stanage, but if it's the cracked sidewalk, that's very similar to what's in front of my house that doesn't qualify for the program, which I'm not complaining about. I'm just mentioning that I share this with our commenter. You have to set the criteria somewhere, and you have to set the borders of the project, much as it pains me to say that, because I'm always trying to enlarge borders of projects to take in other things. As staff stated, this is a program that is focused solely on maintaining a route alongside our streets and not taking care of all of the adjacent problems. And homeowners are still responsible for maintaining the property around that path. And unfortunately, your driveway is raised, mine is sunken, collects debris, but it is not in the critical path. And it appears that it's less dangerous now, thanks to Public Works adding some asphalt. But there is a point at which the homeowner has to take responsibility outside of the critical path. I'm sorry. That's all I had.
I don't really have any comments. My only thought as you were presenting this, again, I will echo what they said, is it's a great program, and I think I even brought this up the last time you presented, but just, if there's, I'd be curious to know how many of the sites that you identified in this round were also identified in the last round and are maybe like kind of problem areas, and, are you kind of tracking that? And when it comes time to replace that sidewalk, maybe trying to develop a different plan that we're not always having to fix these same spots over and over and over again.
Good point.
I will caveat, one thing that's incredibly tricky is just there is a careful balance we need between removing and replacing concrete and preserving tree cover.
Right, right.
So, we get both sides of the coins where people be happy to have that sidewalk removed and replaced every 10 years if there's a parcel tax, and then there's others who say just get rid of the tree and replace it and we're done. So, we do have to kind of balance that. And in terms of coming back, So far, we haven't really seen any repairs that were previously done by the city that we've come back for. I have seen like areas where they were repaired maybe 20 years ago by a homeowner and we've repaired them now. But I think in terms of city repair, coming back to fix a city repair, we haven't seen yet. 10 years in front of a problem tree is a pretty good lifespan, unfortunately. Then 10 years is the lifespan for a good sidewalk in front of a street tree. So, I mean, this would be the time we would start seeing it if that's occurring. But so far we haven't. That being said, there is, definitely a trend that the southeast and eastern side of the city tends to require more repairs than the rest of the city. And some of that has to do with the very narrow right-of-ways and the older sidewalks. Some of those are over 100 years old, and they're no longer, if they were poured at 4 inches, they definitely are not 4 inches anymore, because sometimes I rip them up and they're 2 inches. And when it's 2 inches with the tree, that just makes it more likely in these narrow right-of-ways that it's going to be damaged quicker.
Can I, if I may, I've been on the commission a few years, and certainly before this program was implemented, and there were definitely cases of tree root problems that caused multiple short-term repairs at the same location before this program. The city has gotten a lot more expert, I believe, on evaluating roots, understanding when a tree has to come out versus when the roots can be trimmed back productively.
Just to be clear, I'm in the let's have trees camp.
Sure, yeah. Right, we have to keep planting trees because they die. I mean, there's a whole cycle, right? It's, yeah.
Well, and also I think the trees we're replacing these trees with they're thinking about this kind of stuff now more.
Yes.
Yeah. I'll just echo also how important this program is and appreciate the work to make it successful. To address that interface between the boundary of the sidewalk and then the driveways where it comes up to it, I wonder if there's a possibility of expanding the criteria to include where that boundary of the sidewalk meets an adjacent surface. In the example of the photo that was shown, driveway's lip is coming up. So the driveway that is creating the, hazard, to put it, is outside of the boundary, but the 2-inch hazard is along the boundary of the pedestrian walkway. So if we were to expand the criteria to include that adjacent surfaces to the sidewalk would be included in the criteria, I guess also keeping in mind the importance of working within the program and keeping it successful, is that the kind of criteria that would just open up too many more cans of worms, or would that be manageable?
It's difficult to say because as of right now, because it's that's outside of the survey boundary, we don't have that data. So it would be a complaint-driven source for those kind of locations. There may not be very many, but we just don't have the data to say one way or the other.
So it's not part of the survey.
No, the boundary, that linear discontinuity is if where it's parallel to that's like if it's within the sidewalk, like those sidewalk panels are moving. Typically it's the center panels, like if they're moving. It's not if there's like in this case, like the driveway approach is moving, or if there's like a private path to the curb, if that's uplifted right next to it, those would be captured. So we'd have to rely on service requests or complaints, or if we see them ourselves.
Okay, that makes sense. If it's not included in the survey, that would increase the scope of what's required for the survey, and not worth it.
We can definitely, again, from a repair perspective, we can include it. It's just something, we just don't have the data to do it easily.
I see. So it would have to depend on the reports rather than the survey.
Yes.
Vote. if it met, I guess that would still require an expansion of the criteria to include the edge cases.
Yes, because then, for example, in this, we'd have to replace the driveway, which was outside the pedestrian circulation path, which is kind of the focus of the. We do it in the sidewalk policy. We are allowed to do we are allowed to do driveway approaches and curves, but it's typically if we're having issues with the sidewalk repair and getting a clean conform while doing the sidewalk repairs.
Is there a way to limit it to minimal changes, as in if shaving would take care of it, that's one thing, but without exposing you to needing to replace the whole driveway? We're getting way too specific with the criteria that way. It's if.
Yeah, it gets difficult because, then a shaver would need to come out and assess it. And if it's something if you wanted to meet the criteria, like a 2-inch, the reason 2 inches are in the repair criteria is because they're not shaveable.
Oh, sure. Yes. Under 2 inches for it to be shaveable. Okay. Thanks. Talking through options, so appreciate the feedback.
Do we need a motion on this one? So I move that the commission recommend the staff proceed with the sidewalk repair criteria as presented for preparing calendar year 2026 and 27 repair locations.
I'll second that.
All right, can we get roll?
Commissioner Barnes?
Yes.
Commissioner Kerr?
Yes.
Vice Chair McCloskey?
Yes.
Commissioner Zuba?
Yes.
Chair Hiley?
Yes.
The motion carries.
And can I make a motion to extend the meeting to 10 p.m.? We have 2 more items to go through.
I'll second.
Or are we thinking a little bit later is needed?
Let's just start with 10.
Okay. Right.
Raise hands or roll call?
Raise hands.
We're good.
All right. 10 p.m. And then we'll get on to item 4, project naming conventions for east-west streets.
Don't have much of a presentation on this item. This is at the request of commission, but I have a visual I can show to help facilitate discussion. But the issue is how we talk about distinct segments, particularly of Solano Avenue, could also potentially apply to other east-west streets like Marin Avenue that in our draft ATP project list has multiple projects on different segments. So just for facilitating discussion, most of the conversation I think focused on San Pablo to Masonic stretch versus Masonic up to the city boundary at Tulare, because I believe, as was brought up at the request of this, there is some branding on the Berkeley side of Solano Avenue as Upper Solano, and so to reduce confusion, is there other terminology we want to use when we're describing projects between Masonic and Tulare, between San Pablo and Masonic? Is that also then, is there distinguishing west of San Pablo, there's a commercial extra extension of the commercial zone for several blocks, and then it's residential up and over the hill. So here's visual from an earlier presentation sort of describing different improvements over time on these different segments, just as a background for discussion, but I'll leave it there.
So I have a procedural question. Because this is a commission-proposed agenda item and we lack much of a staff report, can we have a little leeway in proposing names and making comments before public comment in order to allow the public to respond to that?
That is a good question. I think if you have a particular description, it was at your request that you want to hear if there is public comment on as part of it. I think that should be fine. Maybe in the future we can figure out if there's a way to include it in the packet so folks see it in advance, but I think presenting it now, it's within the scope of the agenda, so if you have something you want to see if there's public comment on, I think introducing it now is appropriate.
Thank you. So I might suggest that we use our pre-public comment time to propose names, and then our post-public comment time to discuss them.
That sounds good.
Okay. Shall I start since I proposed this item?
For it.
Okay. So currently, the area in this map that is red is referred to as Lower Solano, and the area on Solano bounded by gray is referred to as Upper Solano. And Justin talked about a couple of the reasons why that's somewhat confusing, including the branding in Berkeley. Just from a physical standpoint, the part of Solano, the portion of Solano that goes up and over Albany Hill is also upper. So it creates a little confusion. This is probably the OCD part of me responding to this, but it has always bothered me. So I would propose that the area marked in red and blue on this map, potentially all the way over to Jackson, would be referred to as downtown Solano or downtown Albany. But for the purposes of our projects, I think downtown Solano is probably most appropriate because it is kind of the retail hub and has a high energy to it that the rest of Solano in Albany does not have. I have mentioned before that I like the term uptown Solano in relation to the term downtown Solano to refer to the town part or retail area of Solano from Masonic up to Tulare. Another term that was proposed was mid-Solano. The remaining portion of Solano in Albany could be referred to as Solano on Albany Hill. I had not considered how this sort of naming would relate to portions of other east-west streets. But in my experience, that hasn't been so much of an issue.
Can you remind me, is this, when we are talking about this, is this written down? Are you like in any of our like city documents, is it documented as Upper Solano, Lower Solano? Or is that mostly just how we're colloquially describing them in meetings and with each other?
I'm unaware of it in city documents formally designating different districts of Solano. My recommendation would be to focus on how we describe it in terms of projects, transportation projects or streetscape projects. Mm-hmm. I did reach out to Solano Avenue Association and the Chamber with this question before bringing it for discussion, and the responses I got were that there was not necessarily support for branding of different segments of Solano. They focus on treating Solano Avenue as a single entity, and there was some criticism of the Berkeley section branding and sort of sectioning it off like that. So I was bringing this in the context of how we talk about it in terms of transportation projects or streetscape projects, so that we're clear with our terminology versus it being a broader branding of the commercial district. I have not seen that in other city documents.
Thank you.
Justin, you brought up the question about parallel streets. Do you have any reason to believe that there's a need to be more specific about the segments of other streets like Marin?
More in the context of we have identified in the ATP San Pablo de Masonic as distinct from Masonic to Tulare for Solano Avenue, and we've also done the same thing for Marin, identifying the San Pablo de Masonic section and the Masonic to Tulare section. So my thought was if we're identifying those two geographies distinct in our projects, it might apply to both. I don't think we've identified that same distinction separating other east-west projects, but those two we did have distinct segments as separate projects on the project list.
Great. Those suggestions, open it to public comment. Are there any public comments for this item?
Not seeing any hand raised.
All right, hand it back.
It's a good idea. I haven't really felt hampered by my need to describe different sections of Solano Avenue. It doesn't, I mean, it's almost like, what block are we in? And it would give me the same, in more detailed information, in fact. But there's a certain, I don't know, it's almost like a commercial appeal to being able to define the two areas. I do find it interesting that the Solano Avenue Association and the Chamber were kind of lukewarm, or maybe less, on this, and that I think bears some thought. But as a convention in naming, I mean, it's just what we call it, and there's no legal requirement. It's just a suggestion that we go that way, I think. Yeah, I mean, those are my thoughts. It's late.
I mean, I feel like this is, you know, one of those things that we could say whatever, you know, like we can call it here whatever we want, but outside of this room, I mean, people, like, when you're talking to people just out and about, what I hear is always Lower Solano, Mid Solano, and Upper Solano. So I think, you know, I don't really have a preference. I feel like we can maybe as a group agree to a different kind of wording, but I don't want us to get to the point where we're like correcting people and being really strict about the language. I feel like, you know, it's kind of it's like a social, like kind of like a social construct that you can't, you know, I don't know how much we can just change it right now. But I really like your proposed naming of downtown, uptown. I think that those are really great alternatives to lower and mid, or lower and upper, but I always thought of this as Mid Solano, because I see it as a continuation, all of Solano.
Yeah, I think in the context of naming it for transportation and streetscape projects, to me, upper and lower Solano, I see the division. For Marin, upper and lower, I associate that division with where I see that along Solano. So if we were to change the naming for Solano, or in the context of the transportation project names, to downtown and uptown, Solano, I don't think that that would translate to Marin. And then I would also even suggest changing Marin to probably just simply east and west. If the dividing line is really BART, there might be something different. But I think in the context of the transportation projects, if Solano is going to change naming, Marin should too, just by association. Something more descriptive of that road. Yeah, so I would say east-west.
Just to be clear, we have the power to recommend to the council. This is a moment when the ATP is being formulated, and we're going to be using it for a long time.
But it's not written in the ATP, is it?
Sure it is.
I thought you said that this is what we have just called it, but it's not written down. Is it?
No, he said it wasn't in the city.
Oh, okay. But
I'm sorry.
It's included in the ATP as,
We have several projects in the ATP on different geographies of Solano and Marin. So
and in there it's labeled as.
if there is direction from the commission on how we should name it, that could be reflected in the project titles of
okay.
ATP projects.
Got it. I thought this was, okay, then I agree that we should have some sort of agreement about what it's called, if it's not just verbally how we're describing things, but if it's documented somewhere.
Mm.
I didn't realize that it had been written down somewhere.
It's in the names of the projects in some cases.
Right.
So I hear what you're saying about equivalency, and I'm having trouble adapting. To me, the environment of Solano is so very different than the environment of Marin. So I don't think I see that same need. But we should be specific. One way to refer to San Pablo Avenue to Masonic would be the default sort of lower Marin, which doesn't take the air out of a residential area maybe as much as it does a vibrant commercial area. And then you could say mid-Marin for Masonic to Tulare, which I think is a good description. And just to be clear, on Solano, I was recommending Solano on Albany Hill, Jackson to Masonic, downtown Solano, which is maybe a little bit wider westward but that's a tough border.
San Pablo to.
Well, okay, so if you say Solano on the hill doesn't really start until Jackson or after Jackson.
Okay.
And there is retail in most of the area, not all of it, to Jackson. And that's actually the only place that you could put a cannabis dispensary in Albany. So it could become a happening place. You never know. That's another issue. We're going to leave that out for tonight. And then so Solano on the hill, Solano on Albany Hill, downtown Solano, uptown Solano, lower Marin, mid-Marin, or what I'm proposing.
I could definitely live with those. I mean, this is just a naming convention, and if it showed up on a staff report to help clarify which section we're talking about, those are fine. It's fine.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah.
Okay. So are we deciding this for transportation projects? Are we recommending to City Council that these are used for transportation projects? How do we proceed?
I didn't recommend a formal action to council. I just recommended comments to staff that I would incorporate into the project naming in the ATP. But if you're wanting to act beyond that, that is your purview.
Then if it's okay, I'll make a motion. I move that we ask staff to adopt the following names in our planning documents, including the ATP going forward. The portion of Solano west of Jackson, Solano on Albany Hill. The portion of Solano between Jackson and Masonic, downtown Solano. Portion of Masonic, the portion of Solano, it is late, from Masonic to Tulare, uptown Solano. The portion of Marin from San Pablo Avenue to Masonic, lower Marin, and the portion of Solano, Marin from Masonic to Tulare, mid Marin.
Second.
Thank you.
All right, take roll, please.
Commissioner Barnes.
Yes.
Commissioner Kerr.
Yes.
Vice Chair McCroskey.
Yes.
Commissioner Zuba.
Yes.
Chair Hiley.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Right.
Thank you.
Quick motion to extend just 5 minutes.
Second. Hands?
Great. All right. And last but certainly not least is appreciation for Commissioner Jovendell.
Would you like me to pull up the draft resolution? I don't have a presentation on this item, but did provide a draft for resolution for the commission's consideration.
Yes, please.
Yes.
This is the resolution of appreciation to Fareed Javandal for his service on the Transportation Commission and its predecessor, the Traffic and Safety Commission. Whereas Fareed Javandal has steadily served the City of Albany since 2001 as Commissioner, Council Member, and Mayor before stepping down as Transportation Commissioner in January 2026 upon accepting a position at the Alameda County Transportation Commission. And whereas Fareed Javandal has demonstrated exceptional dedication to the City of Albany over more than 2 decades of public service, bringing a wealth of professional expertise and institutional knowledge. And whereas, over the course of his service, Fareed helped facilitate the development of Albany's first active transportation plan adopted in 2012, and the subsequent plan now under development, along with other plans including the Complete Streets conceptual design and plan for San Pablo Avenue and Buchanan Street, and the Adams Street and Keynes Avenue traffic calming and bikeway study. And whereas Fareed Javandal contributed to numerous active transportation projects in Albany during his tenure, including the Buchanan Bikeway and Marin Avenue reconfiguration, Ohlone Greenway improvements, paths along Pierce Street and Coronesis Creek, and many, many intersection improvements. And whereas Fareed reliably contributed thoughtful policy guidance, design review, and recommendations to advance policies, programs, and projects that came before the Commission. Now, therefore, be it resolved that the Transportation Commission expresses its sincere appreciation to Fareed Javandal for his long-standing service to the City of Albany and wishes him success in his future endeavors.
I move adoption of the statement.
I second.
All right, take roll, please.
Commissioner Barnes.
Yes.
Commissioner Kerr.
Yes.
Vice Chair McCroskey.
Yes.
Commissioner Zuba.
Yes.
Chair Hiley.
Yes.
Motion carries.
May I add huzzah? And also, Fareed was exceptional at making very clear and argument-resolving resolutions on a regular basis.
You're here.
we take public comment for that?
You didn't.
Okay.
Anyone wishing to speak on that item?
Anyone still there? All right, thank you.
We have announcements.
Yes.
I have one,
I was going to ask.
but staff,
I have a couple of. All right. So currently, initial paving activities. Work on Marin Avenue has successfully accelerated to target most of the disruptive portion of paving work during the AUSD spring break, when pedestrian and traffic demands are generally lower. Specific dates are a little bit in flux due to unexpected rain potentially next week. So the website will continue to have the latest updated schedule, but looking to begin paving some of the paving work next week, the most disruptive work during the following week, and likely we'll have final paving continue into the next week. There will be open to traffic during paving operations, but cyclists should anticipate rough roadway conditions during this time, and alternative routes are recommended. Also, we'll be maintaining crosswalk access at Marin Elementary during pickup and drop-off times when school days are in session. Other announcements are we're expecting at the April 9th Parks, Rec, and Open Space committee meeting to have a kickoff discussion of upcoming planning and design work for the Pierce Cleveland Park Connection project and the relation with park programming. And so we're also expecting to then bring that discussion to the commission next month to kick off that planning effort. Park Rec and Open Space has also discussed design options for replacing the asphalt path on the south side of Thousand Oaks along Memorial Park and the potential tree impacts, and we'll also plan on bringing that discussion to the commission next month as well. And finally, that we're tentatively scheduled for April 20th, City Council to have the discussion of the ATP Active Transportation Plan project and program priorities recommended by the commission.
Thank you, Justin. Any other announcements?
May 14th is Bike to Anywhere Day, formerly known as Bike to Work Day. And the Albany Strollers and Rollers, along with Councilmember Robin Lopez, thank you, and the City of Albany are sponsoring an Energizer station again at Marin and Masonic from 7 to 9 a.m. with coffee and various baked goods, good cheer, and fellowship. And we welcome everyone to come and say hello on May 14th.
Wonderful. All right, with that, meeting adjourned. See you in April 23rd. Thank you.